Thank you for letting me join you too. I'm afraid I'll get stuck in my antiquity back there.
There we go. Okay. So what we're doing right now, if you look up at the front, you'll see my Chromebook. My Chromebook is actually live streaming this screen. That way, a student who is not here tonight will hear my voice projecting through the Chromebook onto YouTube. But at the same time, anytime the screen changes, she's able to kind of correlate my voice with the screen change. This is the most basic way to integrate technology. This right here, just I'm talking and something else is doing my job, meaning it's duplicating my effort. That way later on, if this student, let's say, showed up late to class, sick, family emergency, vacation, I don't have to worry about trying to catch the student up. Technology is doing my job and duplicating what I'm doing tonight, thereby saving me time and energy to try and catch the student up. So this is something that we are going to practice. But before we even get into that, I want to go around and if you go to the agenda, the URL is on the screen. Go to that. Remember that it is editable. So please do not delete anything. You are simply there to click, follow links, bing, bang, boom. And once you get to that link, and if you scroll down to week 3, you will see a Twitter chat review. Do me a favor, click that. That is nothing more than a big table with your name, your Twitter handle, and then I want you to enter the Twitter chat that you participated in. All I need is the hashtag, the day, and roughly the time, because some Twitter chats are duplicated. You know, like Sat Chat comes out Saturday mornings. Breakfast Club, they come out at 5:30 and 7:30 multiple days a week. I don't really want to have to be searching for thousands of tweets for you. So do me a favor and just let me know what Twitter chat you participated in, and then the day and the time. So again, backing up, go to that, and you can just type in goo.goal/lowercase k, capital X, capital S, MLP, hit enter. It brings you to this document. Scroll down to week 3. In the week 3, the first thing that you should see is the Twitter chat review. This is not shared with you. This is something that you're going to have to type in.
Even after it said I was on it.
I'm guessing I was doing something wrong because I tried to get on 2 different ones and I was following them.
Okay.
So I didn't see anything happen when it was supposed to be happening.
Right.
And I even tried on my laptop.
Okay.
Thinking, so was there something like you just get on, you follow it, and then?
Yeah. What you do is you search.
Right?
You search for the hashtag,
Uh-huh.
and then you click either all or live,
Okay.
depending on what device you're using,
Okay.
and then that constantly updates
Okay.
every time the Twitter.
I clicked on the all because it like lets you do the top stories or the all.
Yep.
And so I did the all. And
You were using your mobile device, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was like never. And then on the computer, I thought that it's all.
Is it an active tweet or a Twitter chat?
It was on the list. It was supposed to be.
Okay.
So we're supposed to be on our phones?
No, either
No.
way, either or.
Yeah, just put in the Twitter chat that you were using. Here's the thing, if it was inactive,
Yeah.
meaning Jerica, right? Jerica started to go to one, realized that it was inactive, it was not working,
Okay.
just switch Twitter chats. Not a big deal. There were 2 that you
I did,
tried.
that's how I was doing it, and I quit. because
I do Magic Chat and then the interactive findings notebook, they're both inactive.
Okay, so do me a favor and just type those in.
Okay.
At the same time, let's be honest, it's not like this is a highly policed thing. The gentleman who started this Google site,
Oh, yeah, clearly, but.
he doesn't go in and check these. It's a community. It's really on you if you want to start a Twitter chat. If it falls, to go back in and remove it. So it might not hurt for you to send that person a tweet, an email. There's probably a way to contact them through Google+. Contact them and just say, hey, I tried going to this Twitter chat. I think it's inactive. But again, put the name in and I'll search for it. And if it doesn't look like anything's been posted using that hashtag for 6-8 months, weeks and weeks and weeks, then it's probably inactive.
Well, one of them, it said, like, somebody even posted, like, oh, there is a tutor
They're
chat tonight
on-
at 8, but then
that's
it
what-
never happened. So I was like,
Ed Tech?
Ed Tech, yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
same
like,
thing. They posted, hey,
Twitter
we're on
chat
at
at
8.
8, and then it
There was
never
nothing.
happened.
Oh, yeah. Thank God I'm not the only one.
I wonder if something happened to the moderator,
I have no
to where the
idea.
moderator physically was no longer able to do
So I
it.
just picked a different one,
Okay.
and then that one didn't work, so then I just.
Has anybody not accessed this agenda?
I've accessed it, and then I don't know, I missed what you said.
Scroll down to week 3,
There.
and the very first thing on the agenda is the Twitter chat review. Click that.
Can we put what we plan on following if we weren't successful?
Well, I mean, since the assignment is essentially over at this point, just put in what you were going to follow, and then it's on me to find out, were you trying to follow a, extinct chat to where you're like, hey, I tried, nothing happened. Well, it doesn't exist anymore. At the same time, if you say, well, I was trying to follow it, but it didn't work, well, then that's not necessarily on the Twitter end, that's on the picnic end. Ready? We're in the stupidest career as far as acronyms. Picnic. Problem exists, or problem in chair, not in computer. Picnic. Problem in chair, not in computer. You'll be surprised, and in math, we found out that the majority of problems, in higher level math problems, the majority of the time, there was one step wrong.
Yeah.
One step. Usually that's the issue when it comes to technology. If something happened, one issue. Maybe you missed a step, maybe you skipped a step. One thing usually is the difference between success and failure. So when you go to that Twitter chat review, looks like this. You'll notice that my name is at the top. I follow the MASSP chat. Let me say this, the most freaking boring chat I've ever been a part of in my life. They were chatting about the new SAT test that rolled out this week. It's an administrator chat, and apparently a lot of schools were having problems with the SAT. And there were plenty of administrators on there talking about how it didn't go great, issues they were having. I don't think I was able to contribute one legitimate tweet to the participation. Now, I retweeted some things, and I liked some things, so I was active, but as far as like tweeting out, I didn't have anything that I could tweet. I was not in the position that the questions were being promoted at. And it felt like MASSP was doing a little bit of recon for College Board, trying to kind of feel out the Twitter community and say, how did they think it went? But either way. So you'll notice Mariah is not active tonight. Prayers go out to her, at least my thoughts and prayers. I don't know where you stand, but Catherine Smith, make sure that you put your Twitter chats. I'm saying this to her. So again, and I love how Jerica put in the attempted. That makes it easier for me to know which ones were ineffective. If I go to this one and I see EduMatch, a friend of mine is a moderator on that. It is one of the fastest growing Twitter chats in the country. It's amazing. And they're really, really cool because they're trying this new app called Voxer.
We have it, I have it.
Okay.
Mary Kay.
Okay. Voxer is essentially Twitter with FaceTime. And you can only do small little snippets. I can't remember the time frame that you're allowed as far as video because it cuts your video down only like 10 seconds. What can you say in 10 seconds? There you go. But it's amazing how fast this community is going. And so that allows me to say, all right, she was on EduMatch. I'll check EduMatch. If she was there, I don't need to check these because it's verified that she was active. Questions? How did it go? It was so empowering for me as just a human being to see a couple tweets that was like, hey, excited, first time tweeting. That's awesome because you're going into a profession where people are stuck in the mud, where people are not willing, once the school bell rings, they don't really plan on improving. Now, yeah, they'll go to a PD, but at that PD, the amount that they're going to evolve or improve or change is incredibly limited. You're already coming out of your pre-service going, listen, I know how to network with other teachers. I know what communities already exist. I can stay up to speed without spending a dime of the school's money.
was frustrating though if you couldn't get on, because
It is frustrating. At the same time, it's probably you were doing something wrong. It probably wasn't anything on the Twitter end, and that is something that we can free up.
I felt excited. I found, Randy and I both are on Twitter chat, but I went.
At the same time?
Yeah.
That's cool.
From the listing, I went and clicked on them, and it took you to a format, and it wasn't TweetDeck. Now I can't remember. I'll have to bring it up again. That you would tweet from that would automatically hashtag it for you. And I clicked on it, and said, if you're new, and it had a whole newbie saying, if this, then do this, and I'm like, okay.
That's awesome.
So, and in the midst of it, I learned how to like something, because I've never been on Twitter ever.
Okay.
And even
The heart?
after I signed up, yep, I learned how to like something, because people were liking what I said, and
That's
some people
awesome.
retweeted what I said, but I still don't know how to retweet what they said.
That's okay.
But I'm like, I learned a couple things while I was going on.
You know how Facebook has the back arrow for share?
Mhm.
Where you're taking what somebody else posts and you're sharing it out to your community. The retweet arrow is literally just this cyclical
Oh,
arrow.
yeah.
Yeah, that is you're taking something and you're spitting it back out, back into your Twitter community. Because here's what we forget. Although we might share the same space and time right now, and some of you may share many spaces of time. Your kids go to the same school district. You're distantly related. The networks that I have access to are dramatically different from people that I share a time and space at work with. My personal networks, right? My PLNs, my families, the communities that I'm interested in as opposed to the communities that they're interested in. So when I retweet something, I'm saying, hey, a lot of people I know will benefit from this. There it goes out into my networks. Twitter is an amazing resource, and here's the thing, it's free. There's no reason that more and more educators should not be implementing this, and I will even say it because we're going to find out later on in their classrooms. Yes, there's always a chance that a kid is going to tweet something inappropriate. They're going to tweet something inappropriate regardless of whether or not you're there. Whether they're home, you can't police them. Stop trying to be Big Brother and stop trying to micromanage everything. Either treat them like an adult or treat them like a kindergartner. My high school kids would use Twitter to communicate with me outside of class. And the beautiful thing is, if you're following them, you can follow their tweets. It's not rocket science. If they tweet something inappropriate, it comes up on my wall. Even when they delete it, it's still on my wall. I still have proof. So anyway, that was the first thing. Hope that it went well, and if not, we will figure it out. Okay?
What I love most, ours talked about professional relationships.
Professional relationships?
Yeah,
Okay.
And there was another student who was first-time Twitter follower for the class, this exact class in Indiana.
Oh,
So there
really?
was 3 of us new, and someone was like, I feel like I have to behave myself.
What one were you on?
Kinder chat.
And let me pull it back up, actually. The other reason that we're doing this, let's say that you are brand new to Twitter. There are at least 9 other people that you can actively follow and that can actively follow you. You may only have your PLN as far as your social network on Twitter might exist or might only be comprised of your EDU 346 people. But that's a great place to start. Then you go to these Twitter chats and you're like, man, that person is spitting out some amazing stuff. I'm going to follow them. Click their name, click the plus follow. Really easy stuff, just like on Facebook. That's not me. Any comments or questions about Twitter or Twitter chats? Okay. Here's the nice thing. When you find one that just hits you where you're at, oh, that's not, never mind. I thought that was something else. When you find a Twitter chat that hits you right where you're at, you get addicted. And even if you can only scroll back through it later on, you don't ever want to leave that community. So hopefully it was a good experience, and if not, we'll see if we can't clear up some of the bugs. Going back to our agenda, tonight, I hope that we're able to get through some of this relatively quickly, because I want part of tonight to be a working time for you. If you are already done with your lesson 1 lesson plan, I want tonight to be a short night. If you haven't yet started filling out your lesson 1 lesson plan, I want tonight to kind of be a working class. But here's the thing. The lesson plan Jackie was kind enough to share a template with me last week. All I did was just send it out to a couple people that I knew and said, is this the template I'm supposed to be using? Because the one that I got online was not the same one that Jackie had. Just a quick email to verify, and what's hilarious is that is the template that you need to be using. So that is now on Blackboard, and it's in this agenda. 2 different places, no reason you can't use it. But notice what it does. It does the exact same things, it's just in a fancy table-based design. The unit that you're talking about, what's your thematic unit? The lesson title, the greater period that you're targeting. Your CCSS, or state standards. State of Michigan uses Common Core State Standards, CCSS.
Do you want our technology standards under there too?
We're going to talk about that. The resources and materials, these are things that are not necessarily just given. My students use the textbook maybe half the time. But because it wasn't like a daily thing, I had to put that in my lesson plan so that the sub said, today you need your book. Kids are like, oh, crap, yesterday we didn't, so I need to go get it from my locker because it just stays there unless Gentry tells me. What resources or materials, and here's the tough part for you guys. You need to actually find resources and materials. None of this while I'm not in a classroom yet. Yes, it's theoretical. It's hypothetical. This is what I will do someday. Everything exists online. You can find free textbooks online. Find it. Make it. Okay? What objectives do you have? And we are going to talk about a lot of those today because I think too often, even experienced teachers stop focusing on these small little pieces. They stop focusing on the quintessential elements that make up a lesson plan. And I'm not even saying a lesson plan because I've got to give it to my administrator. If your lesson doesn't have certain components in it, it's not a question of if it will fail, it's just a question of who it's going to fail. Because, yeah, you can hit your smartest kids. A monkey can teach your smartest kids. Hate to tell you, you're not going into teaching because you can teach to the smartest kids. You're going into teaching because you can hit the majority of your class and you can either remediate for the lower half or accelerate for the upper half, depending on what your population is. So there are certain parts of this that, to be honest, they get lost. They get forgotten about because we stop really remembering those basic ideas. If we keep scrolling down, what's your objective? What is the learning objective for that day? What do you hope the students can say, I can do this and I can prove that I can do it at the end of that lesson? The essential question, and this one is really kind of a, this is a theory and philosophy-based component of lesson plans, but because Baker has it in there, we are going to do it. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. The inclusion activity. Describe an activity that will ensure that all students and their voices are included at the beginning of the lesson. Again, this is a philosophy statement of Baker. They believe that inclusion should happen at the beginning. I disagree. I think inclusion needs to be in the lesson period. Inclusion meaning if little Johnny was not here yesterday, you don't just get to say, sorry, little Johnny, you weren't here yesterday. You don't get to do what we're doing today. What are you doing to catch little Johnny up while the rest of the class goes on? And I'm a realist. You'll never have 100% of your kids doing everything right 100% of the time. You will have kids move ahead. You will have kids lag behind. Your job, it's part of your job, is to literally just juggle all of those. And if that scares you, leave and get out of the profession now. Because nobody's ever going to say, well, you know, just get the majority of the kids. No, teachers are being more and more expected to say, you better hit over 80%. And that 20% that you didn't hit, you better show me documentation every day that you were doing everything physically possible to catch that kid up. And the kid just chose to fail. The expectations for public school teachers are dramatically going up, but rightly so. Teachers for years stopped really forcing the issue with those kids that were lagging behind. They were okay with just the kids who were super smart. The sequence of activities, that's again kind of like the activity we did last week where you're giving directions. Don't assume that somebody understands what you're talking about. Break down the lesson into the most minutia steps. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Every possible detail. If that turns into a 5-page lesson plan, good. Good. You're doing a good job. The assessment. Now, this is something that we're going to talk about today, so if you're like, I don't know what assessment is, that's not a big deal. We'll talk about it. Differentiation. Differentiation is one of those things that if you know how to use that word in the correct conversation, it demonstrates that you have an understanding of what teaching is. Differentiation is this. At the beginning of class, we all ask a few questions, doing formative assessment. I then realize that this group needs a little bit more help. This group, you guys are good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break you into those groups based on your ability levels. You guys are going to go at your pace, work together. If you get stuck, if the group gets stuck, call me over. I will work one-on-one with this group. What are you doing to meet those individual students' needs where they're at that moment? Not, well, I'm going to let them fail this unit, and then I'm going to catch them up when we're doing the next unit because the next unit is super easy and I can juggle both at that time. No. What are you going to do that day to catch that kid up? That's different.
It's not, or perhaps it is, I differentiate in that I allow students to have choice. So this person chooses this, and this person chooses that.
Yes.
This person chooses that. Could that also be?
What is the choice based on?
Interest.
Then you're allowing the student, based on where they're at, that ability. Absolutely. That's differentiation. You can't say, well, I'm going to let you watch this movie or that movie.
No, but let's say we did a project, but I give them freedom to choose a topic or something based on their interest. Would that be considered differentiation?
Yeah, I mean, as long as they were still demonstrating mastery in the concept, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Student choice doesn't mean, hey, you're going to write this paper. You can write it in blue or red ink. That's not differentiation.
So are we talking about like tier 1, 2, and 3?
Ah, what do you mean by tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3?
Well, like, 'cause I look at like, well, this is what I put to start it off. I put tier 3 may need additional support, unless I got them confused.
I don't know what tier 3 is. Explain what tier 3 is.
Okay, tier 3 would, to me, would be the students that need extra guidance.
Okay.
More than the majority of the classroom.
You didn't get to tier 3 without getting to tier 1 and tier 2. Who's in tier 1?
What? Huh? That was fast.
You don't have tier 3 without having a tier 2 and a tier 1 above
Correct.
that. Who's in tier 1?
Tier 1 are those who understand the directions and that pretty much can master the material.
Tier 2?
Tier 2 are probably more the average that need some guidance but aren't mastered the material yet.
Okay. And when you say tiers, are we talking about Bloom's taxonomy?
No.
What are we talking about?
It's school, elementary schools.
It sounds like
Tier 1, they're the different levels of support that are offered in the school.
Different levels of support.
Yeah, they're qualified. Tier 1 students are like normal. They get general teacher support. Tier 2 students, a lot of them get pull-out services or push-in services for a little support. And then Tier 3 are pulled out for additional reading, math, help.
Okay.
When you think Tier 1 student is your typical test, I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
All like a multiple choice test, 4 selections with a short answer at the end, okay? Tier 2, you take the essay response off the end because they struggle with writing. Tier 3, they don't have the essay and they have A and B to choose from instead of A, B, C, and D, and they probably have it read to them. Right?
Yes.
Close.
Close.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, now it's in the agenda. Now you do know. Now it's on you to get educated. MTSS, multi-tiered system of support. If you were in education 10 years ago, it was RTI, response to intervention. Response to intervention, the state of Michigan said, no, we don't like the word intervention because it has a negative connotation. We're giving multiple levels of support, multi-tiered system of support. That's what she was meaning by tier. Now here's the thing. That is a statewide initiative. You have to be able to demonstrate how you are accommodating or modifying for different students based on the tier that they're at. Tier 1 is everybody. Tier 1 is good instructional practices. If I'm explaining something and somebody doesn't understand something, bad instructional practice says, sorry, suck it up, Charlie, figure it out. Good instructional practice says, all right, you guys do what's on the board. I'm going to come over here and give you one-on-one support. Now, that doesn't mean he went from tier 1 to tier 2. That's just good instruction. That's just me being a good teacher. Tier 2 means you couldn't handle consistently that tier 1 support. You need some level of additional support. That's the push out or pull out or push in method. You need to go out just for a little bit of extra time, and by the way, that can be classified as win time. W-I-N, what I need time. If a student is consistently struggling in math, pull them out for what I need time, and to put a positive spin on it, elementary people call it win. You win, even though it's literally targeting your deficiency in an area. That's tier 2. Tier 3 is, listen, you are on your track for 504 or IEP. You need additional support and additional funding so that we can give you your support, because the teacher in the classroom and the parapro, the general parapro, they're getting worked over by you. You're getting way too much attention. There used to be 4 tiers until the state realized that schools were misidentifying those tiers, and they rechanged it to 3 tiers. Tier 1 is just good instructional practices. If you click that link, that will take you to the Michigan Department of Ed website that breaks down MTSS.
It sounds like just a formal way of talking about scaffolding in the classroom, where I have taught it, now I'm going around to see how everybody's doing, and I'm going to stop here because these students seem stuck, but these ones are flying. So
yeah. Scaffolding is literally just it's an antiquated term. They don't use it anymore, but yes, that is exactly the same thing. Now, at some point where scaffolding stopped working and you say, I have 23 kids, 22 of them are proficient and masterful in this concept. That student is not. That's where you immediately drop from tier 1 down to tier 2. You can't scaffold enough for that student. That student needs additional support. That's where scaffolding is. Scaffolding is great for the general ed population. Tier 1, absolutely. But the moment that student drops down to tier 2, there's got to be more support. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Let's actually go into this really quickly so that you can kind of see what was being talked about. Multi-tiered system of support. We're going to go right there. Tier 1 is everybody. Everybody. Tier 2, targeted interventions. Some students. Well, this didn't work. The big picture didn't work with everybody. A couple of kids struggled. I'm going to target them, but I'm still not going to change the dynamic of my class. I might move those kids. End of the day, we have 15 minutes left, and this person, that person, and that person really struggled in the math concept. Everybody go over there. The rest of you silent read time. I'm going to go target those students. That's tier 2, and listen, document the living crap out of that. That is proof. If you ever have to go into an IEP and the parent is belligerent, tell me what you're doing for my kid. You don't want to just pull out a bunch of stuff out of your head. You want documentation, and listen to me, for every student. You are a freaking secretary with a classroom. Create day 1, create a file with every kid's name on it, and every time you do some kind of intervention with that kid, write that crap down. I'm not saying you got to go full-blown on report, but write down a sentence, day, time, topic, good enough. You want some type of documentation to cover your own rear end. And then tier 3 is you're on the road for a 504 and IEP, because we need additional funding to make sure you're successful. Because the general ed teacher and a push-in parapro or a pull-out reading specialist are not cutting it. We need more time. Questions with MTSS? Awesome way to bring it up. Great job.
can you define the difference between a 504 and an IEP?
Yeah, IEP demonstrates that your learning deficiency is at a certain gap between the rest of the kids in your grade level.
And a 504?
Is literally just there's some type of specific learning disability, SLD, specific learning disability, in one specific area. You are a freaking rock star in everything except that.
It can also be medical.
Yeah,
It can be medical. Your students who go to a doctor and are labeled ADHD, they get a 504, not an IEP, unless that IEP or unless that learning deficiency has dramatically affected their whole academics. A 504 is filled out by a principal. Let me say that again. A 504 is filled out by a principal. Don't ever let a principal push you on and say, hey, I need that 504 filled out. You are not trained. Don't even let that fly. An IEP is filled out by a group of specialists, people who go to years and years more of schooling than you so that they can sit down and physically prescribe out a track for a student.
It can even be something as simple as they need an environment that they're not distracted in when they're
No.
testing.
No, that is a very old system. Here's the thing. If I have an attention issue, and all that attention issue means is that I can't focus. I get distracted super easily. I don't need a 504 to say, I need to take this test somewhere else. A teacher should be able to say, yeah, you need to take this test somewhere else. Now, the problem is that with schools in some of our areas, they don't have a freaking room available. Like, there's no room. The janitor's room has kids taking tests in it. So it does come down to, well, we don't have somewhere to physically put them. Well, then you end up finding some way around that. But no, if a student struggles with taking a test in a big environment because of anxiety, that's just a general accommodation. You shouldn't need an IEP to do that. And if you as a teacher,
You're gonna have an IEP.
if you as a teacher say, nope, every kid is going to take the test in front of me,
But if they have been diagnosed as having ADHD.
that's a 504, not an IEP. Unless it's after years and years and years, their gap is huge.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Is
You'll
that-
hear the
is
term
that
gap.
Is that the way that that's supposed to work? Because I've never known a child with ADHD in any schools I've been in with a 504 plan. So he's been an IEP.
That's probably because their intervention didn't start early enough, and that small quote-unquote attention issue or hyperactivity was this problem that slowly over the years, because I'm sorry, when was the last time you heard an elementary kid get held back? You don't. The parents have the right of retention, and no parent says, oh, I want my kid to repeat third grade. So that attention issue creates a gap in 1 year. That gap gets expanded because no teacher's that good. You're not. You'll never get 100% of your kids caught up. That gap after 3 years is now exponential, meaning every year it opens more. All of a sudden the kid gets to me in middle school and I go, we have a problem. I have an 8th grader at a 3rd grade math level. Now you have an IEP.
And you said something about a 504, being ADHD would be a 504 at that point. The only time I've ever known of a 504 plan in all the schools I've been into is when it's a food allergy to guarantee that they can be offered a gluten-free meal or a
Diabetic.
You'll hear 504s. A lot of times, if a teacher, you make a recommendation on a student, you're a 3rd grade teacher, and you can document that your kid is more than a grade behind. Hypothetically, you can't get them caught up because they're so far behind. You would recommend that student receive some kind of testing to determine, do they have a SLB? Are they quote-unquote special ed? Do we need more interventions? Well, if that kid demonstrates on that test that they are high enough to where they don't qualify for an IEP, the principal can say, no, let's give them a 504.
Okay, a principal's not going to do that because it's more work for them. Let's be honest here.
Okay,
That's
that's-
why there's the
no,
last
no,
504.
no,
is-
just
is
Nope,
describe
that is a legal situation.
Just describe my son
And that's-
goes to school,
and that's
he
fine.
never suggested a 504.
That's fine.
Because it's more work for them.
Regardless of your circumstance, that's the law.
Well, I know more now, but then as my kids are homeschooled.
That's fine.
because-
And that's
because
fine. Here's the thing, a
administrators don't go there.
504 is not an option from a principal.
No.
It is a mandate. Now, I have the option of saying, little Johnny every day screws around. I observe it. He tests not that far behind grade level. You want a 504? No, little Johnny needs to get his crap together. And that's where my philosophy as a principal says, education starts at home. Mom, Dad, you're going to come in and sit with little Johnny for a day and observe his opinion.
And I've heard all of that, but then the doctors also told them what he had, but they still assume and gave
Are
him
we
a-
talking about your exception?
Nope, because as that person who's been through it, I've talked to many parents, many teachers, many administrators,
Mhm.
4 principals who never suggested 504 plans, and not just for my son, many kids, because I've done lots of research about
Mhm.
it, because I'm like, there's gotta be a better way.
Okay.
And I had a special ed, the director say, you're right, this school doesn't know what they should be doing. And then I went on, she looked at all the other schools in her district because
So we're talking about a school being wrong,
not just one school district.
Okay. So here's the thing. Leaving this
It's
class,
county.
when you get hired and you go into a classroom, you are a little bit more aware of the rules and regulations.
Well, I want to know where you learned about the 504 plan
It's the
versus the
law.
IEP. I know,
Cindy's
but I,
perfect, because I've had this conversation.
but we've never been taught that here in any class that I've discussed, other than someone bringing it up just because it
Right.
comes up in the course of discussion.
Okay.
What administrators or teachers, we bring it up, but not like this
Yeah.
is your mandate.
There's
like you
there's
said.
literally a master's course that's 9 weeks on special ed. I don't have the ability in this course to go into depth. What I will do is find some resources for you guys. And just like the MTSS, you can go and educate yourself.
That's what I'm saying. I appreciate the input, but I'm saying that what you're saying should happen very often doesn't. But as people going into the field,
And that's
we should know more
you
about
are still liable by law if a student has a 504 or the parents are saying, I want a 504. The school, again, based on their discrepancy, can say, no, you're not going to qualify. But you're also subject to legal action if you're denying that student a free, appropriate public education. And to be fair, the response shouldn't be, well, then I'm pulling my kid out. The response should be, grab your lawyer, we're going to have a discussion.
I'm taking this class right now, and this explains, we haven't quite got into it yet, fully, but it goes into that.
I'm gonna hit that class.
We both
It
have.
goes
We touched on it.
As a
You
teacher,
just
I
touched
have
on it?
You won't
had
get into it any more than what we just did.
Oh, really?
special ed teachers
Unless
go in
somebody
their
else
IEP
teaches.
meetings.
Mhm.
Then what we
They,
get.
they come to me and they say, okay, can you fill this out? And I have to fill out what behaviors I've observed.
You guys listen.
I've had to fill out what behaviors have I observed in the
Yep.
classroom, both academically and socially.
Mhm.
And then what have I done to meet the needs of the student and that kind of thing. And
I'll give you 2 examples and then we'll move on. I've been in an IEP where, based on my in-class observation, I was adamantly against this student getting an IEP because we're not talking about a learning disability. Listen to this word, learning gap. If little Johnny screws around in class long enough and gets pushed on long enough, yes, there will be a learning gap there, but it's not because of a learning disability. It was because of some situation that a teacher didn't handle correctly, that the next year that gap was there, that teacher didn't identify it and correct it fast enough. Now all of a sudden, 3 years later, it's a huge gap. I've been in those IEPs and said, I see the testing. I don't think that this is a learning disability. This is a student at the high school level that is making a cognitive choice to not be successful. You can't write on a piece of paper, oh, well, we're going to do this for that student then. I've seen a high school senior get pulled out of general math and put into special ed math just so they can graduate. That's illegal. Now, on the other end, I've also seen a young girl come in, the hardest working girl I've ever seen. And God bless her, I think she has 2 marbles rolling around upstairs. There's not a whole lot of intelligence. We're supposed to get her through Algebra 2? Are you kidding me? This is a student who I can sit down with one-on-one, get to pass basic components of algebra. The next day we'll come in and have no idea what we're talking about on a consistent basis. So I had to go and argue very vehemently that she get a 504 because, listen, she qualified too low in everything. All of her scores across the board in all 5 major areas were so low she didn't qualify for an IEP. Explain that. And you can have a special ed consultant from the county there explaining it to you and it still won't make sense. We have a student who is performing right here in every area and they're not special ed, so we had to write a 504 for her. It's not a perfect system. If you're going into education because it's supposed to function correctly, go run your own business. If you're going into education because you say, this is what's right for students, and I'll lose my job before anything goes wrong with that. I will fight and I will go to the school board. I will go to every other school board. This is what's right. This is what's best for students. Doggone it, it should happen. That's my experience, and at the same time, it doesn't happen everywhere. But it's the answer isn't let's get out of education. The answer is let's figure out who's making the decision to ignore it, and let's make them pay.
I took my son's education in my own hands.
And
I
that's
fought it for years, and I looked into the whole, how do you fight not getting a 504? How do you fight these things? And it just said you can go to court for years and still not get a decision, and you're still in the same place. So, but I'm here because I want it to change for other kids.
Yeah.
In
a nutshell, that whole conversation was all around the idea of differentiation. That right there explains to you that it's not a small conversation. It's big. And it can be legal with MTSS, where you have to document a special ed student or a student with a special needs accommodations, where you have to document that you are doing it. Or it could just be those general ed differentiation tactics, like giving students choice. The summary, the integration, and the reflection, that's kind of what we're going to talk about with the tech integration piece today. And then you'll notice down at the bottom, Baker College Teacher Prep Lesson Plan Form. It continues on. Point being, this is the lesson plan that you need to follow. And I've already had a couple people share the last one with me. Either just copy and paste. That's it. Just figure out what information goes where on this form, copy and paste. Questions before we move on?
I do have one quick question.
Go ahead.
So I went to Common Core trying to find the standards, and I guess I was looking for like 3.2A or
They changed it, nope.
And all I found was text with not really any numbers, so.
I went to the Michigan Department of Education.
Thank you.
It's a
Yep.
lot
Just
easier to
literally
use.
Google Common Core MDE. Ready?
Because I was able to find in verbiage what I wanted, but I guess I was looking like.
The Common Core website itself is really hard to navigate, I found, so I just went to Michigan Department of Education itself and I just found what I needed.
MDE standards, state of Michigan. There they are, every standard. Which you will see, technology, METs. We're going to talk about that here in a minute.
Okay, so it's not, it wouldn't be unusual to just get text and not necessarily like a benchmark number or something.
You just
Okay,
click
don't
on-
use the word benchmarks anymore. They're not called benchmarks, they're called standards. And then here's the thing, it might seem like, oh, that's not a big deal. They don't even refer to them the exact same way anymore. They've completely rewritten them. Benchmarks went down to every possible tedious step that a kid had to show proficiency in. The Common Core state standards have generalized them to say, well, this kid is really proficient in this, moderately proficient in this, they average out. Does that make sense? They're not nearly as detailed, they're generic.
But it'll be text, it won't be like.
No, you're gonna have a code. There's a code.
There is a code?
Mhm.
Okay.
You gotta click on it. You click on one of those.
Yeah, you're just not going to get the same code that the benchmarks were.
Okay.
Or your Huskies if you were, your GLICs if you were elementary, your Huskies or HSCEs if you were high school. But no, I mean, they're there for every possible content area. And
They're just way more vague.
they're generic.
Yeah.
They're very, very broad, meaning you as the teacher can say, I'm meeting this way. And I mean, unless you've got a very, very structured, regimented curriculum, it's kind of your prerogative. You'll notice the new Michigan K-12 science standards, the next-gen science standards. For those of you who are science, they're out. Make sure you're aware of that. And also notice this, the social studies K-8 GLICs and Huskies. Those are outdated. The state of Michigan is currently in the process of rewriting those. Are they out yet? No, but they are being processed. So that's where the state standards are. Make sure you can find them.
I did my lesson plans for preschool.
For preschool,
Pre kindergarten.
early childhood
Yeah.
standards, good.
Yeah, so it's, based on those.
The early childhood. You're identifying learning targets, learning standards?
Well, and they have a specific set of technology standards, would I go by that then too?
Yes, yes. Okay, that actually takes us to understanding by design. When you're creating a lesson plan, you don't start with the topic. Let me say that again. You get the idea from a topic, but when you're building a lesson plan, you actually go backwards. And what I mean by that is you don't ask yourself, all right, what are we going to talk about? You ask yourself, what do the students need to demonstrate proficiency in? What do I want them to be able to do when they leave the class, or if it's a 2-day, 3-day lesson, what do I want them to be proficient in? What standard does that meet? You're starting at the end, and then you go backwards. And you ask yourself, all right, if this is what I want them to do, how are they going to demonstrate that they can do it? What activity am I going to have them do? And that activity could be an assessment, by the way. How are they going to demonstrate proficiency in that? Then, if I'm going to have them do that to demonstrate proficiency, not that I'm going to teach to that, but I've got to train them for that or prepare them for that. Does that make sense? It's a backwards thinking design. And here's what's frustrating, and I should have brought a curriculum book. During my student teaching, with some amazing, effective teachers, Sadly, they were old school enough to where they did this. They sat down in a curriculum meeting, and someone said, all right, I want you to list the standards that you teach every year. Yes, some standards you don't get to because the kids were a little bit slower that year. So you focused on these. Some standards you get to and then you get a little extra. Don't want those either. What standards do you say we have to get to this point? Those teachers freaked out because they didn't have their book. That's a problem. If you're teaching a book, you're going through a whole lot more education to be better than that. Because then when that book is outdated and you have to order a new curriculum, are you just going to order a book that looks the same? Because it doesn't scare you, you've done that before? Or are you teaching standards because you understand universal design? You understand when the kid leaves second grade, they have to be able to do this. When they leave first grade, they have to be able to do this. That means from here to here, I have this much time. And I got to be able to take them from here to here. In order to take them from here to here, the end of the first grade standards, the end of the second grade standards, I need them to be able to do this, 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 and this. That's going to sculpt my year. Some schools are calling them power standards. You have 5 things in 9 months. Those kids better be excellent in those 5 things. Some schools are saying, good luck. Just don't let them fall behind. And they're throwing it back on you as a teacher. Well, that's where you got to get with the curriculum director and say, all right, let's break this down. At the end of first grade, what are they expected to know how to do? At the end of second grade, what are they expected to know how to do? As a second grade teacher, I got to be able to close that gap. That's that's understanding by design and universal design as far as making sure that you understand what are you wanting them to do. What's the end goal of your lesson? It's one thing to have a big idea. Jackie, you've already filled out a lot of this stuff. What's your big idea?
For students to be able to use math, like in the real world, apply math skills in the real world.
Okay, so the application of math skills.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really big. I'm hoping that your individual lessons, because I haven't looked, you've shared them with me, I haven't looked. Yeah. They get really specific on what specific skills we're talking about. Yeah. Good idea. I geometry guy, loved teaching solving right triangles. Now, when you say solve right triangles, there's a whole lot more to that. Talking about Pythagorean theorem, talking about inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent, solving for angles, talking about sine, cosine, tangent, solving for angles, and then the application into physics. So a big idea would be Pythagorean theorem. And then each one of those lessons got very, very specific. But it's easy to break that big idea down into topics, into lessons. But when I'm actually creating the lesson, I want to actually go to the very bottom and say, what standards do I want them to be able to hit at the end of this? What do I want them to be able to do proficiently or masterfully? What activity are they going to do to demonstrate proficiency or mastery? That should then guide the instructional process. And that's a really difficult concept because personally, even I can remember taking this class. I remember the teacher. I started with a big idea, broke that big idea into smaller ideas, and then just did my best to effectively teach those ideas. Was I effective in it? According to the teacher, I was. When I got into the classroom, I felt a little bit snowballed because I literally found myself going page by page. And that's a scary world to be in. What happens if your principal comes in and says, hey, we're tossing out textbooks. Create your own curriculum this year. That's what Oakland County did. Wayne Risa said, hey, English standards, the MESA units. Any English people in here? Not one. Okay. MESA, familiar with the MESA units?
No.
Okay. M-A-I-S-A. I want to write it down. M-A-I-S-A. 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 MESA units. Oakland County got together and said, screw textbooks, we will build our own curriculum. And so for years, ELA people got together. What do we want kindergartners to be able to do at the end of kindergarten? We're going to create units that will build to proficiency in that. First grade, what do we want them to do at the end of first grade? They're coming in with these from kindergarten, what do we want them to be able to do? And they built units that said, if you do nothing else, then follow these. And teachers did this, not some curriculum company that's not in the classroom. Then they did it to third grade. This took years. It took a lot of time because what's important to you as a teacher might not be what's important to you as a teacher. But listen, here's the thing. The curriculum could change. The standards aren't. And even when the state of Michigan says, oh, Common Core is out, is what the student needs at the end of second grade and what they need at the end of third grade still the same? Yes. Now in high school, we started kind of shoving some stuff down, requiring our middle school to no longer just be this happy time between elementary and high school. Okay? Now you actually have to start preparing kids. And it's easy when you can hand kids high school credit. Stop goofing around in middle school. If you want high school credit, get it now. You can have it. Well, that's easy. Understanding by design, universal design thinking with the end in mind, questions on that. And that's really a thought process. You're not going to be able to say, yeah, got it. That's going to take years to perfect. But when you get it, you will be on your track to becoming a curriculum director. If you like the ebb and flow, scope and sequence of K-12 curriculum in one specific area or just the general ed K-12 population, this right here will get you on your way to thinking like a curriculum director, because you're just not seeing subject-based, right? High school, we're subject-based. You're seeing K-12 English, K-12 science, K-12 social studies, K-12 arts, K-12 math. And you're seeing this beautiful flow. And it might be cyclical. It might just be this beautiful pendulum that flows. And it starts over again. And beautifully flows, builds on each other. If you can think with that end in mind, your lessons will all of a sudden, they might only cover 1 or 2 standards. They will be dynamic and powerful. Because you'll know, I need these kids to be proficient in this. In order to demonstrate proficiency, I need them to do this effectively, accurately, consistently. And then in order to be able to do this, that's going to guide my teaching. Questions with that? Jackie talked about the technology standards. Right now, everybody go into the agenda and click on the ISTE. International Society of Technology and Education Standards, and then the METS, Michigan Educational Technology Standards. Go into both of those. Give you a couple minutes, I'm going to take attendance. I have not looked into the METS. Do they break down early childhood? Or are they in the early childhood standards?
I go to specifically, it's michigan.gov, it's Early Childhood Standards of Quality for Pre-Kindergarten. Or are you talking about the technology part? That's included in all of it.
The technology part?
Is part of that entire, whatever you want to call it. Catalog, yeah.
Diane's gone too.
What, I'm here.
Oh my goodness, you don't look like your picture. Sorry.
I'm like, I'm here. Don't let me have the keys.
I saw the 3Ds, I was trying to
You're
remember.
Diane, right?
Yes.
Deborah and 3D animation.
Say if it was Denise, my sister.
Um,
So Debbie and Denise.
My mother's Denise.
You're Deborah.
Awesome.
That's my sister's Denise.
We have a sister Deborah and.
And I have 6 brothers or these. My parents were Deb, Doug, Don, Dennis, Dave, Denise, Janet, Eric. And then,
I don't think I knew there was that many.
oh yeah, and then her sister had 7. Daryl, Darwin, doing Daryl, Darren, Don, Donna. And then
So if I Google the Michigan Early Childhood Standards of Equality, which I already have it up, where are the technology standards?
oh wait, they're in language. They're under the language, let's see. There's, yeah, on that page you'll see technology, literacy, early learning and technology, right there. Page 47. One step to the corner, you can take the upper left. Oh my then it took you to dual language learning, which is
Yep.
not what it, so
We,
it wasn't
Right,
accurate
we
at all.
work with the NBE and the early childhood department here, but I've never actually seen these, so this is a learning experience for me. Early childhood expectations, creativity and innovation. Children use a variety of developmental tools to learn and create. Okay. All right.
Of course, I didn't do that
That's-
in my lesson plan, because I.
No.
the technology
And here's the thing.
component.
That's why this is a working class, because as you realize, oh, wow, that's that. Great. Here's the issue. And it's not really an issue, it's just something to remember. If I go to the ISTE standards, think about this question. Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. What standards are you picking? Think about it. Don't say it out loud. What standards are you picking in your lesson plan? I, as an administrator, want to know what standards are you hitting. What are you going to click? Students, teachers, admins, coaches, computer science educators. What are you going to go to? All right, open it up. What do you think? It's a think question. It's an opinion. You can't get wrong with your opinion.
I say students and teachers.
Students and teachers.
Yeah, I would say so.
Oh, we can say down, students and teachers.
Okay.
That I'm delivering content and integrating technology in a way that makes it relevant for
Okay.
them, and that I'm allowing or requiring of them to demonstrate mastery with involvement of technology.
Beautifully. Listen, if you're integrating technology correctly, the students will be demonstrating proficiency in something, right? They're not just going to be an active participant where they're sitting and getting. They will be doing stuff. They will be hitting some of these standards. Listen, you have to be demonstrating that you are trying these. Now, you are not going to have ISTE standards for students. You're going to have early childhood standards of equality for students. But you will still have the ISTE standards for teachers, right? Okay, so make sure that you demonstrate what you're doing, and then what the students hopefully will demonstrate proficiency in as well. As an admin, I have to know these and the school improvement frameworks. I have to know how what I'm doing is affecting my school in a positive way in a long-term format. Right? Now again, when you click this, and let's go into the teacher ones. There we go. Let's look at just number 3. And this is a lot bigger than this webpage, so this is on you to go out and actually dig deeper. But let's look at number 3. Model digital age work and learning. What are they going to need in the real world? If the known civilized world that we live in were to end today and every student had to go out and get a real job, are your kids prepared? Because hypothetically, let's back up. The whole point of education, listen to me, was to make kids literate, be able to read and write, and then listen, be able to show up on time somewhere. Be able to put in a full day. They even give them a lunch break. They give them recess. Not really a recess. And Google, although, is starting to give their employees recess because they realize that expulsion of energy makes you highly more effective when you do have to sit down. Listen, if nothing else, your students should know how to show up on time, put in a full day's work, and be literate. Be able to read and write. Be able to receive information and give back information. So, if your kids are ready to leave your classroom and enter the digital world that we live in to work, what are they going to demonstrate? How are you having them do real world things? Does that mean teaching them how to operate a calculator? On the computer. Never worked on a factory where somebody's toting around their laptop. You said yes. What do you mean, Jackie?
I think you have to. If the student doesn't know how to use a calculator to go into the real world, they're not.
Isn't that why we teach them math X? Why do we teach them math X then?
Well, because not everything you can do in your head.
Okay. This is a massive argument that still goes on today with high school math teachers, whether or not kids should be able to whether a calculator is just given. Everybody should have access to one. I'm not here to argue that, but I will say this.
Like high school, yes.
Is a calculator a real world skill that they'll need? If they're a CPA.
If they're trying to figure out how many packages of buns to buy
Okay.
for the number of hot dogs they have, and they can't do it in their head. Yep.
If you can explain in a real world scenario, and listen, not just explain it, but the kids are actively doing it. That doesn't mean you writing down 2 times 3. That means you giving them a real world scenario story problem, and they have to work through it. And I'm sorry, there's going to be kids that go, oh, a story problem, I give up. They can give up, you don't get to give up.
But if they're college bound, then you definitely have responsibility to prepare them
But I've had
to
professors who are
be
like,
successful in the college environment.
I've had professors, because I'm a math major, where they're like, you're not gonna need to do this without a calculator. And he goes, I'm not asking you to, because the real world's not gonna ask you to.
I told my high school kids, efficiency with integrity. Do it the fastest way with the most integrity. I don't want you to cheat. I don't want you to Google the answer. I want you to be able to demonstrate that you can do it the fastest way possible, and that usually means having a calculator. A CPA does not do the work for them. I mean, how many of you have gotten your taxes done? Yeah. Did they enter stuff into a pre-built template? Yes. They didn't do the math. We stopped making them because taxes took hours and hours and hours. Someone smarter than them built a template with all the formulas. Now, that tax provider has to know what to go where and how it computes, because if I ask them a question, I don't want them to go, because it says right there, got to enter it in line H, got to add G and H. You do have to have some level of intelligence on what you're doing and why, but at the same time, when you're teaching your kids, are you having them model, or are you modeling a digital age work and learning environment? Or are you just handing them a worksheet with a bunch of multiplication facts? Well, they got to demonstrate multiplication facts, guy. That's part of my standards. Okay, but there's a good way to do it. That doesn't mean printing off a worksheet. Here's the thing. Is it realistic to have your instruction supplemented with just basic multiplication facts? Absolutely. Because you can't really apply multiplication unless you know your multiplication. And let's say I'm in high school and I do have a kid who's demonstrating 6th grade proficiency, and I'm in geometry. I'm going to hand the kid a calculator. I'm not going to worry about the multiplication facts. Know that the x means times, the dot line dot means divide. We'll get through the rest. Because I'm really worried about this. I worked in a factory where grown people, 50, 60, 70 years old, could not take, and this is hilarious, 12 parts in a box and figure out how many parts they did that day based on the number of boxes. We laugh. They had to sit there, pencil, paper, calculator, and it took them a long time. They got through it. They did it accurately, but doggone it, I hope whoever that teacher is fired. Because that's a basic life skill that you should have. And I don't mean life skill as in, well, this person's never going to have a real job. We need to teach them just life skills. No, basic multiplication is the exact same thing as talking. If we expect people to be able to talk, we expect people to do basic math. That could be less than 10. But at the same time, they better be able to do basic math. Now, these are the ISTE standards. And if I go back, these are not necessarily all for students. In this case, what we just picked, those were for me. I have to be able to demonstrate that I'm teaching to those standards. Now, here's the thing. Those standards integrate technology, but they're still good standards. If I'm an art teacher, and right now, we're just going through sculpting, that's okay. Can I integrate technology using modeling a digital age and learning? Absolutely. Have them sculpt something that a real world sculptor would need to do. And I don't mean, well, art is a way for you to express yourself. How are you going to make money off it? Well, it's just going to be a hobby. Don't you want to be really good at it and make money off of it? Enjoy it? So how are you going to do that? Maybe you go to an art gallery and say, wow, that's a really expressive piece of art. I'm going to go try and make that. I have a friend in college who went to Kendall Institute of Arts, thank you. Made $10,000 off of a sculpture as a freshman in college. $10,000. It was this beautiful, like he took a bunch of whiskey barrels, took the wood, repurposed the wood, and then basically it was this 10-foot winding piece of wood. And it was beautiful. You'd never thought it was repurposed whiskey barrels.
How much whiskey did you have to drink to appreciate it?
They were donated to the college. And that was the nice part. He was taking donated wood, and he turned a dime off of it. Now, did his art teacher in high school ever say, you might be in an art competition or in an art gallery where you've got to sell work? Go make something. No, but that kid's desire and his design, he had to take a lot of engineering classes. Kid was a freak smart in math. And instead of applying it into the engineering world, he said, my passion, my choice is to make stuff. And I realize that if it doesn't sell, I don't work. That's reality. But at the same time, he did demonstrate that proficiency. Let's look at the standards for students really quick, that way you kind of get an idea of what the ISTEs are. That's okay.
I turned mine on.
That's fine. I told Mariah to email me if anything went really bad. Creativity and innovation. And these are the students. Creativity and innovation, research and information fluency, communication and collaboration. I don't know where everybody is on this. To me, if your students aren't doing this every class, there better be an assessment coming that you're preparing them for, because these are real world skills. This is reality. And don't get me wrong, if you know of a job and you're planning on going into a job where you sit by yourself, work for yourself, and you don't have to communicate or collaborate with anybody else, ignore what I'm saying. But in the field of education, they don't want students just sitting in a desk, sitting and getting for however long you're with that student, where it's just you and the teacher, or you and the student. They want students communicating with each other, collaborating. And listen, digitally, integrating technology into that. One of the things that we're going to talk about later on is using student work as a digital portfolio online. Are your students broadcasting what they're doing to the world? Why not? If they're not doing it, why not? Even if it's crap, get the kid proud to show off what they're doing. Because in being proud to show off what they're doing, they're going to go, man, next time I want it better. And that kid will be more intrinsically motivated to improve. These are the ISTE standards for students integrating technology. Questions on ISTEs for teachers or ISTEs for students? And again, if you are early childhood, then you'll be using different student standards. But the teacher standards you'll still be expected to show. Questions on ISTEs before we get to METs? Okay. We'll go over the METs and then we'll take a quick break. The METS, the Michigan Education Technology Standards. Notice how they're broke down. Notice where your lesson would fall, right? Because if you're in elementary, you've got to be able to teach a gamma of grade levels, right? High school, I had to be able to teach 9, 12. In fact, high school, I had to be able to teach 6, 12. Well, that's two different sets of standards for technology. How many elementary people do we have in here? High school? Okay, so we have more high school people. Let's go 9, 12.
Are we going to have both standards,
PDF.
the ISTE and the METs?
Say what?
Are we going to have both
No.
standards? Either or?
Yes.
What was your question?
Yeah,
Are we going to have
2009.
both ISTEs and the METs? or
Behind,
either
so I was
or?
like, oh.
Either or.
Yeah, they're talking about NCLB. To be fair, these are technology, these are not content. Okay? Let me say that again. Yes, these are 2009. That's 7 years old. They're only 9 years away from really not even being adequate research. So hopefully the state of Michigan is planning on updating these. Or the state of Michigan might even default to ISTE and say, all right, we're just using the ISTE standards. I'm okay if you use either or. I really am. I've used the ISTEs. I like them. But I've also, my friend at Lakeville, who was our technology guy, he was pushing these. I'm okay with these. You'll notice how they're broken down. They're broken down 9, 12. That's the age bracket. Communication and collaboration. And then they're broken down into substandard 1, substandard 2, substandard 3. Identify various collaboration technologies and describe their use. Being able, and again, this is on your end, this is not on the student end. Plan and implement, and I drop down to 4, plan and implement a collaborative project using telecommunication tools. Google Hangouts would count. Describe the potential risks and dangers associated with online communications. You get the idea. The METs are the exact same thing as the ISTs, they're different. If that makes sense to you. MEL, Michigan E-Library. Distinguish between fact, opinion, point of view, and inference. We keep going. Critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. Digital citizenship. You demonstrated that when you were doing your Twitter chat, hopefully. You weren't tweeting anything inappropriate. Technology operations and concepts. Broken down, and that looks like it's it for high school. So, if you go into the MET standards for your grade level or the grade that your lesson plan or your thematic unit is really focusing on, pick the MET standards that you want to use. Do you need to have some in every lesson plan? Yes. Because this is a technology integration class. Every lesson should have technology integrated in some capacity.
Both as a teacher and a student?
No. And I'll explain that. I'll explain that when we get back from our break. There are 5 areas that I don't think you can really say you're integrating technology unless it's one of these 5 areas. One of them is simply instruction. What I'm doing here is me, and in fact, what I'm doing here and here is integrating technology into the instructional phase of this class, right? Does everybody understand that? For this lesson, if I was scripting this lesson, I would have to find the standard that is allowing me to meet, I'm integrating technology here, and I'm integrating technology here. This is me using technology to improve my instruction. This way I don't have to have, I think I had like 12 tabs. I don't even want to imagine a classroom with that many whiteboards. This is allowing me to be more efficient and effective as a teacher. This is me integrating technology into the instructional phase. But every lesson plan, you can't use instruction. The next one needs to be maybe assessment, maybe collaboration, maybe communication, maybe 21st century skills of critically thinking and problem solving.
Isn't this kind of communication, too, because you're communicating to other...
Yeah, I could use that, for sure. But at the same, and I see where you're saying, could I use this same lesson to hit the communication side? Yes, but for what we're doing, no. This is its lesson. We are going to do a virtual class at some point where it's all on Google Hangout. I could use that lesson to say we're communicating using telecommunication. And after the break, we're going to go a lot further into the instructional technology integration into your instruction. The way that this course is laid out is that if you do a lesson plan every time we have a tech integration discussion, then your 4 different lesson plans will have 4 different integrated components. Now, if you put it off until Sunday night, and you really don't remember what Tuesday night's class was on, you're going to have a harder time building those lesson plans around that specific area. But we have 4 lesson plans and 5 areas of tech integration. So you do have some wiggle room. We had the first class, we were talking about what is tech integration in your classroom. And the overhead was talked about. This is tech integration into the instructional phase of my class. The other 3 lesson plans that I would have to submit have to have tech integrated into different areas. I can't just keep doing instruction. Me use it, me use it, me use it. How are the students using it? Questions? We're going to take a quick 15-minute break. You and I, as soon as you're done going wherever you're going to go, we're going to go over Twitter chat. Okay. All right. Nobody wants to get up? All right. I'm going to turn the light on really quick.
Change this.
Deborah, what school? 3, 2, 1. What school did your kid go to where he was quote unquote denied a 504?
Darla.
Darla, excuse me.
Well,
Let's just say we started at Open LC, we went to St. John's. And I fought for anything and everything I could think of. He was tested, all that good stuff.
How did he perform?
Well, his IQ is higher than his one. I had
Zero and then minus by.
He has a very high IQ. He's like 2E. They don't know what that even means in any school district I've been in. He has very high IQ, but his issues is executive function.
So what is it, so when it shows his testing, where did he test as far as in terms of grade level?
Beyond his grade levels. And he was at 7 years old, he was testing at like 2 to 3 grades above whatever he did. So he wasn't behind academically at the beginning, but became so because they wouldn't address any of his other issues with the fact that he couldn't deal with the classroom setting most of the time because he was bored out of his freaking brain. And there's no gifted.
Not in a lot of schools, no.
Yeah.
That's
And
not a
even
population.
just trying to teach him about what you do for a kid who's that far advanced. They just threw him into the next grade up in math, which he loves math, but then there's still stuff he's missing. But he still could do, I mean,
You can do 90% of it.
he was doing my geometry, I just did about degrees, and he did it all in his head too. He figured out how many degrees in a 19-sided shape in his head.
And that's a great example of like, what do you do when your facility cannot actually meet the needs of a student?
Went through 3 principals.
What do you do? No, really, I'm asking
No,
you.
what do I do?
Yeah, you're
I
the
fought,
principal.
I went to every, as a principal.
Detach yourself from the parent. You are a principal, or you're a teacher, or you're a special ed director of a school. You have a student who is testing well above, let's say 3 grades, let's just round to a number.
Rewriting curriculum.
Nope.
You're what?
Rewriting curriculum.
That takes time. You need to solve the problem now because you just went from middle school to high school or elementary to middle school. What do you do?
Went from 1st to 2nd grade.
What do you do?
Well, as a principal, I had one that was doing some of the right things, she got fired. I'll have to admit, full disclosure, if you ever saw anything on the news about 2 or 3 years ago about St. John's School District and an out-of-control child, that was my child. That they couldn't differentiate for, that they couldn't help, that he was struggling, and they did nothing but blame me as the parent.
Yep.
And I have a pet peeve about these classes that teachers start talking about parents. It's not always the parent, because I fought every tooth and nail.
If they can't handle the student where they're at academically, you're talking about, and to be fair, you're talking about a population that the state doesn't support. We get plenty of support for students who are behind.
Yep.
We don't get a dime for kids who are
The IQ level, if it's this way, we know we can help, but yeah. Well, that's my thing, I want to get it. But I have to first go into special ed, but I can't get it, you have to convince people that it's special ed.
Because I want to know where it's.
IQ is so high that
Because
people
it
forget he's still a
exists.
7-year-old boy. Like, not even a 9-year-old kid that you
But then I want to be
can
able to take
discuss
this
it
and I
at
want to
such
be
higher
able to
levels, but he still doesn't, he feels emotional. Yeah.
Now,
because
every
his
time.
understanding was so far high, his emotional was so much
Yeah.
higher. Because he was able to roll their eyes at him and just wants to smack him in the face, because he knows what's going through their head, judging them and, yeah. My 7-year-old would say I want to kill myself because people say I'm just bad.
Yeah, well, Word luckily has like the functions, which is what I use.
And notice,
But it's in.
literally did it.
I mean, my best but that would be.
I think, it's just really hard.
Well, the funny thing is sometimes kids who have some of those flash syndromes in certain areas are so behind in all the rest, but then sometimes it's just too.
And not because of the levels, but more so of the concept.
With integrals, we're.
And so this is where the issue becomes where you teach the textbook.
After all of this, in Mr. Forrest, right? After all this in classical, all I will even comfort myself with is that, first of all, Mrs. Ross is the curriculum or the special ed director, and he was trying to convince me with my child, so they know what to do with the next one.
And we use this
Yeah, but it's kind of more simplified.
Oh.
That's good that you're up for the challenge.
But I'm so sick of too. I really have to, and I go over these things, there's minutes, there's these things you can I can't unless they're an IP or 504. You can't hand the kid a ball to manipulate someone's copy.
What's happening here?
Why does he like that? And yet, and he's not in like
Tiering your instruction, tiering your activities, the career that the student chooses, so that regardless of what their current event is, they're going to based on their career.
And then using agreements with my stuff on my election. I don't care what I need to do.
That's just
Oh, yeah.
like from,
Well, I got my engineering degree so much, so it really helped me a lot for this degree.
It's not
And
gonna
I
be
transferred.
all you're gonna need.
And I'm so happy.
Okay,
All right, so like my master's, I
professional instead of that. Only could qualify for special intervention, but instead of the NIV.
I'm like,
Awesome.
so there's no definitely like, it's the worst thing ever. So when I transferred over, I was like maybe 1 week ago.
Highest I have
Just like,
exactly.
I was just thinking,
I don't know,
I could do all this.
and then.
You think it, you
I
think
will
it,
try.
normal translates to that.
Read it?
Read the paper.
Alright, so I'm gonna try another one just because I.
Yeah, no,
It's one of those
you,
things that
it's
I've
not
always
something that you're gonna get away
So
from.
it's my next.
I think this is where professional
Go with
development is.
it, since my kids.
And, one thing that we talk about with, communication, when we talk about technology, information, and communication, so while this community is gonna, what if there was a Twitter chat?
Why are you
So,
looking
at
at
the same
me?
time, to allow this.
And
group
that's
to
when I'm like
communicate
14,
with
saying,
that group.
well, where's this, where's the item?
Oh, that's good. Well, that means I'm really to ask to bring in my classroom, like, what's the first few
I'm
weeks
again,
after
but
they
they
have
have
their
no
support
support
because
because
they
they
have
have nobody ever helped them. They're pushed to something that'll
Google
not.
Translate.
No, we're done.
You can't talk to
Take a big breath. So,
Don't you love that? But they're actually more fluent than we are because they speak properly. But sometimes.
They probably know it more because
They learn the proper
they had to learn
all
it.
these slang.
So.
Actually, linear, I'm taking linear in the summer.
Yeah. The sequence of activities is almost like the step-by-step what the kids are doing.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I was, cause like, there was
I'm pretty
inclusion,
much this right now.
inclusion activity and the sequence of activities, I was,
Your inclusion activity is how you're going to include every student regardless of their ability level. Your inclusion activity is essentially your differentiation.
because it says that it's that will ensure all the students' voices are included at the beginning of the
All I
lesson.
have left is the geometry, the last 3.
I'm not gonna mark you down if it's not at the beginning of the lesson.
Mine, I did mine that it's,
I mean,
because
something when you're
essentially,
teaching
my
it,
first
and you
part of the
were
lesson
teaching
would be
it.
the different areas that we're gonna talk about, so the different, where the tribes are located. So I'm gonna give all the kids names, and we're gonna start by 5 minutes, and have to write down different things they can think about that area, and how it would affect life. Like, in the deserts, temperature, lack of water, things like that are gonna affect things. And then as a group, we come back, each student will get one to add to the list.
All letters, you don't even use numbers anymore.
Love the idea.
Theoretical, and it was an 11-week.
Really excited to see how the,
Yeah, I did it on mine.
So the inclusion activity can't be something like, we're gonna have a talk, or we're gonna like do some kind of,
Transfer.
are the students actively engaged? Are you getting them together? Are you?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not even like a concept that's hard.
because I do that a lot just to kind of get
This
their
just kicked my butt.
perspective before I
You get
start.
0 points if you miss one thing.
I like the idea.
Everyone's gonna classify things together.
Here's the problem, when you might have 3 different administrators, every one of them using the exact same template infers these different things.
So first you can't leave.
If you can prove that it's for the best of the student, You're gonna have a hard time having an administrator not say it's okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
So are you gonna teach
I know this class. Okay,
That's,
so
yeah. I normally focus on that.
it's online and I had David in
So that's
really good or bad?
you're gonna teach them.
And he was,
That's what I would like.
wasn't bad, but from what I was told from everybody else in the class, he graded the hardest out of everybody today. So, like discussion board things, like he's very, you're not going to detail,
Or you're gonna try to Twitter chat against it.
blah, blah, blah. And he made us type on Word.
Kicks me off and basically rolled.
Cindy, forget about us?
Oh, yeah. Cindy was coming, was it?
On Word. I'm looking at it right now.
She probably just went.
So this is an example.
Well, let's just say I changed my major to non-teaching bachelor.
So
Figure out what I can do in education. It's not in the classroom, necessarily. It's not necessarily administration, but somewhere I can make a difference. I don't know where that is. I want to learn more about giftedness because in this state, in this country, everywhere, it's so discounted that my son has a high IQ, but he still has deficiencies in certain areas, and a free and equal
Free and appropriate.
education for my son that they needed to up their game, and because they didn't, he was bored out of his mind, he was issue.
Was he a behavioralist?
Yes. Things that no other kid ever did, and I said, why my son, why is he so different? And I had a school psychologist who berated me, telling me a 7-year-old doesn't think about how smart they are, when I said it matters, and he's got a high
I was
IQ.
the only one to.
And he looked at me and I said, he's never done it less than a 9-year-old, the youngest person I've taken the IQ test too. And I said, and how did my son do? Higher than anyone who's ever tested. So you're telling me that you should do for him what you've done for every kid you ever know. And I, as a parent who've raised this kid, who knows more about who he is and how smart he is and all those other things and all the other deficits, have no valid input in how you should teach him, and you can't tell me how you should teach him because you're telling me he's an exception, but in the same breath telling me a 7-year-old don't sit around and think about how smart they are. You know, he sits around and thinks constantly, and you're having him sit there and do a worksheet. When? Year and a half ago.
No, I mean, what, like, how old
According
is
to this, what the other.
He was in 4th grade.
Like we were emailing back and forth, we were like off on his teaching.
And my daughter's grading, and my daughter has, well, my oldest probably does too, but he's,
How do you, none of them, I was the only one that was passing before.
because I don't subscribe to what homeschooling for most people is. A kid's area of interest leads. Like, I love everything you're saying because you're talking about homeschooling. What they love, what they're good at, that's what we focus on, and everything else just kind of comes along. My daughter's terrible at math, but we work math into the stuff she loves, like cooking. She's taking a homeschooling cooking class right now, because that's what she loves. My son wants to be an engineer. But they wouldn't let him take it. They wouldn't let him take, they wanted him to remedial math in 8th grade, because 6th, 7th grade, all A's and maybe a B somewhere, and on one semester he got a C because he refused to do the busy work.
In my class.
Because he was just like, that's why I And I even talked to the teacher, and she refused to put him in the advanced, not even advanced, just not the remedial. Because of one grade over the course of 2 years.
Yes.
And all he could say was, you know what, I get so bored of
Yes.
getting here, talking about the first 3 days and having to wait 2-3 weeks for everyone else to finish and do all the tests, and so he had to be doing homework. And I wasn't gonna pull out.
She wasn't providing him, or he wasn't providing him with some higher
He's a
level.
quiet kid who never says anything in class, and when he was in Ovid LT 2 years in a row, I teach him, he's so quiet, I don't even know he's there, and I'm like, that's the last thing I want you to say about my kid, because he's smart, he is so insightful, and you don't know that because you won't be there, and she's not the one.
Okay, we are going to get started. Something came through on Twitter this morning very early, and this is the reason that you need to be on Twitter personally. Sarah Giddings. I don't follow Sarah Giddings. I follow anything MSU. Did you really? Michigan State University College of Ed. You have Baker with a track of education. MSU has its own college of education. I got to present there this year. It's a cool little building that they have. Shifting focus this month from presenter to learner, excited to visit for Teacher Prep Conference. That's a conference promoted at you people. If you are in the Teacher Prep program, that conference is specifically for you. Not for me, for you guys in May.
It's probably good to have on your resume too.
Oh my goodness! To know what a college is promoting for their teacher prep program, and you might go down there and go, Baker's teaching this, MSU is teaching this, I'm going to take this. There's nothing wrong with that. Your classroom over time is going to be a hybrid anyway. But listen, I really encourage you guys to go. I don't know what it cost. $25? That's it?
Yeah, and it includes
And you get to go to the most beautiful campus in the state.
So this is where I.
Have you been to MSU?
So you.
No, you've never been?
I bet.
Have you?
My daughter rides there. That's
My niece is in the nursing program.
The campus is beautiful.
Just don't walk alone. Just don't walk alone late at night.
I was literally sitting there before class and I just like scrolling through Twitter and I saw it, so I clicked on it and then I was like looking through it, so that's why I know it all. I didn't just look.
stalker.
Not stalking. I only have like 5 questions.
And here's the thing.
There's not a lot to follow.
I wake up in the morning, and I mean, when I get to work, in the morning, I check my email, I check Twitter. That's what I do. That's part of my routine. And I don't mean I scroll, I click everything. If I like something, I will like it and retweet it, because then I can go back and look at it later. If it piques my interest, I like it, I retweet it, and then I can go back and look at it later. What we're going into is the tech integration discussion. If you consider technology integration, and we're back on the agenda, if you consider technology integration into one of 5 areas: instruction, assessment, communication, collaboration, and then 21st century skills. That includes critically thinking and problem solving. That's the application. How are the students applying what they're learning in a real world environment? Maybe not the environment, but a scenario or a situation. We're dealing with just the instruction. So if your lesson plan number 1, you want to integrate technology into the instructional phase, tonight is for you. Bloom's taxonomy. If you are not already familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, you want to click that link. That sends you to the Center for Teaching at Vanderbilt University in Tennessee. This is Bloom's taxonomy, and I apologize if you can't see the screen. I am going to go turn the light off. Okay, so Bloom's taxonomy basically breaks down the different, not only thought processes, but learning levels, okay? Your most basic is remember. Remembering is literally just a regurgitation of facts. Hey, I taught you 3 times 4. Little Johnny, what's 3 times 4? Oh, you're so smart. No, that is the most basic way to learn. And let me say this, when we talk about different learning styles, if you have a student who can watch you do something and can just replicate it, they're still only right here. They can mimic what you do. Now, if you ask them, stop, why are you doing what you're doing? Tell me why. Don't tell me because you saw me do it. Don't say because you told me to do it. If a student can actually stop and explain something, they just went up in their level. And let me say this. Your teaching should almost be a gauge every lesson. Every lesson should have this. When we're talking about tiering, or we're talking about scaffolding your instruction, this is generic tier 1 instruction right here. But then, as the students practice a little bit more, you should be challenging them higher and higher and higher. And when your whole class reaches their zone of proximal development, right? You guys learn at Baker about zone of proximal development. You should be able to say, our kids stopped right here. In this day, in this concept, in this subject area, they got stuck at the apply, analyze phase. They were able to apply it, but they couldn't analyze the results, fix it, and continue. The scientific method, right? Create a hypothesis. Test your hypothesis. Observe. What would you do differently? Do it all over again. That's literally this phase right here. Apply what you're learning. Analyze the results. Did it go the way you wanted it to? If it didn't go the way you wanted it to, back up and reapply it. If it did go the way you wanted it to, not only evaluate it to improve on it, but then actually create something out of it.
They used to have a phase that was synthesized.
They changed wordings. Where is it? This came out in 1956. This is not the exact same.
But this is that's the latest, the one that Create is at the top.
Create is at the top, yeah. And to be fair, when you synthesize something, you are taking something and you're creating something out of it. But again, your lesson plan should be this walk through Bloom's taxonomy. And then when a kid basically struggles and falls, you should be able to say, they're at the remember phase. Step one. Nope, they're getting it. Not only can they remember it, they can understand it. If I ask them to explain it or tell me why they're doing what they're doing, they can explain it. They just can't apply it in a story problem on their own. You should be able to almost identify within seconds where that kid is. Where does that kid fall? This isn't just something fancy that's colorful, because elementary people like colorful things. Being able to it's funny, but it's true. Being able to identify where a student is at, listen, gives you an immediate opportunity to target that student and to get them to improve. Right now, for my job, I'm building a course on asking the right questions.
Ooh, that would be very teaching that.
So my DVD player just started moving.
It's fine. Right now, I'm creating a course on just asking the right questions. And I am convinced, because research shows it, if you can get a student right here, asking them the right question, will get their brain thinking until they can get right here. And I'm not saying you've got to work harder. Asking them a targeted, thought-out, focused question can get them to think and go, I understand it. How do I apply it? And you can't ask the question, how do you apply it? It doesn't work like that.
I would love to take that course if you end up teaching it somewhere.
Right now, well, when I say teaching it, it's literally just an online course and it's free. And right now, it's just going to be an introductory phase class. The second course that's going to come out of it is how to ask the right questions in assessment. How to ask the right questions and create good quality assessments, because we have teachers with crap assessment. Your A means nothing because all of them are right here. Every one of those questions are right there.
But even asking the right questions when you're having a classroom discussion to get them to think.
There's so much research on teachers facilitating a discussion only around questions and the teacher never saying a word.
Right.
Because those students should be asking each other questions, self-reflecting and metacognitively asking themselves the same questions, and then going back into that discussion with, here's what I hear them saying, here's what I'm thinking, let me just throw it out there. There's a little bomb, you guys think about it, talk about it, just spit back at me what you think. And the teacher's just walking around going, they get it. I'm not even about them, they get it. This group back here struggles. Okay, here's my tier 2 intervention. When I get done with my overall instruction, I'm going to target that group. They get it. Okay, this group right here is kind of iffy, so I'm going to ask them some more questions. By the way, you should have the best comfortable shoes in the world, because your feet should hurt at the end of every day. You should never be sitting down constantly walking around. Even if it means walking over to your computer, attendance, boom, 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 get back out into the class.
Is it similar to what they would call the Socratic method?
The Socratic method is a way of questioning and answering. You're basically creating an instructional practice around the questioning phase. Yes. Yes. And that will be part of my second course, not this one. But yes, the Socratic method is a way to incorporate group discussions around questioning. But you should be able to ask students questions and based on their response, be able to say, they're analyzing. They're applying, they're analyzing, and here's where we have to be careful as educators. Is it okay for a student to do something wrong? As long as you understand why, right? It's not, oh, they got it wrong, darn. Nope. Ask them why. Why did you do this? Can you show me what you did? Because let's face it, math people, when they show work, that's like reading a book. We can step into their brain and find out this is where they went wrong. I don't know what about the ELA people, but when it's math, I can get into your brain just by looking at your work and hearing you explain. And that's my job. I want to know where you're at. And your lesson plan, no, it shouldn't say Bloom's taxonomy this, Bloom's taxonomy that. But the way that you ask the essential questions should be a gauge at the start of the lesson. Oh, my kids already have a prior knowledge of this. I want to get them to understand it a little bit further, and then I should be jumping into the apply. really quick. My inclusive activity, and to be fair, the way that I operated a flipped class, the inclusive activity would have been done the night before so that they're coming in already knowing this. And now I'm just working on, do you really understand it? Do you understand it? And if you understand it, solve that problem. Or if you understand it, explain that theory, that social theory, that social concept. This is Bloom's. This deals with the instructional phase. We're also going to talk about Webb's depth of knowledge, DOK. Webb's depth of knowledge is a way for you to evaluate your questions that you're asking on an assessment. When you create an assessment, are you asking all, pay attention, ready, here we go. Are you asking all questions right here? Webb labeled those as level 1. Level 1 questions, basic. Level 2, and no, it's not a direct reflection between the two, but level 2 are right up here. Level 2 questions have students applying. They're analyzing. See, I love as a math teacher being able to do this. Solve the problem, but explain your reasoning. Because if a kid solved it wrong but explained it right, they're still in that same area and they're still proficient. Yeah, they made a mistake in the calculation phase, but if I gave them 10 questions, their explanation would be perfect every time and their calculations would all average out. And I could still demonstrate that student's proficiency just by asking them why. Can you analyze why you got that wrong? And there's nothing wrong with what, you know what, Jackie? This problem right here, you got it wrong. Can you explain to me maybe what your thinking was? If Jackie's thinking is correct, she's still right here. She still applied it correctly. Her thought process was fine. Now I've got to figure out a way to get Jackie's thought process documented on a piece of paper in some way, shape, or form so that I can go to the grade book and say, Jackie's analyzing or applying effectively. That equates to a C+, B-, however it works in my class. But this right here should almost guide the little microcosms of your instruction and microcosms of your lessons. Now, is that technology? No. That's just good instructional practices. One of the first ways to integrate technology into your classroom is through a web quest. Does anybody know what a web quest is? Good. A web quest is nothing more than a discovery that you send students on. Sometimes you create them, sometimes the students create them. Sometimes they're already created, like this right here. How many times do you wish that you had access to resources? And again, you guys might not be there because you're pre-service teachers. There are going to be times when you're like, man, this lesson, I want to take a mile deep, but I ran out of resources. Just knowing who to ask and knowing the right people to ask gets you access to those resources. So if you click on the WebQuest link, that is going to take you to webquest.org, which is literally a website built around WebQuests. All this is let's say that I built a, and you actually you're going to kind of use one later on. I build a Word document or I build a Google Doc. And that Google Doc says, go watch this video, and it has the link. The students click the link a lot like you guys do. It's interactive. The student clicks the link and goes to the video. I watched it. They go back to that doc. There are 3 questions. Students answer the questions. Step 2, go to this website and find the answer to this question. You're sending the students on this digital scavenger hunt where they have to be the active participant in their learning. That's tech integration into the instructional practices. This is one method right here. Me right now, I apologize for whoever's watching. That was not an earthquake. This is instructional or integration in the instructional phase. But you can also give it to the students to say, you integrate technology into your instruction through a web quest. Go on a scavenger hunt of your own learning, and in 15 minutes, we're going to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. But I can also walk around and go, man, Alex, you're still stuck on 1, but everybody else at your table is on 3. What's going on? What are you struggling with? You know what, Jerica, can you help him? Just kind of guide him through. Maybe it's one thing. Maybe he's missing a click. Maybe he doesn't really understand. And Jerica can explain it in a better way than me. That's that communication. That's that collaboration piece. And Jerica is now being empowered to say, you know what? I can be a leader. I can help. We don't like each other. We don't sit next to each other in lunch. We don't play with each other in recess. But I can help. Now all of a sudden you're empowering students, and it allows me to keep walking around and go, yep, everybody's on track, everybody's on pace. That web quest kind of gets you out of the front. When you start talking about flipped or you start talking about blended, you get this constant phrase called sage on the stage. And all that means is, am I up here to do a performance, or do I want you guys to benefit, even if that means me going to the back and staying out of the way? I want you guys to benefit, and if that means me standing over on the side and just throwing stuff at you, that's what's best for students. A web quest might be a great way for your higher kids. Listen to me, for your higher kids. Maybe you create a web quest challenge for your high kids, and then all you got to do is just create 2-3 links for your highest kids. And honestly, maybe all it is, because you're just struggling with it, maybe it's just the next grade level content. But you know what? They're challenged, they're involved, they're engaged. I used tiered groups in my class so that if Alex, based on a pre-test score, was the highest kid, Alex is now a tutor for that group. But Alex at some point is going to get bored tutoring everybody. And at some point, to be fair, if Alex does his job as a tutor and I do my job as a facilitator, Jerica's not going to need his help as much, right? Diane's not going to need their help as much. And that little mini community is eventually going to stop needing me and Alex altogether. They're learning and growing on their own. Now I got to figure out a different way to challenge Alex. Maybe a web quest is the way. You're integrating technology and the student is using it. Now here's the tough part. What if you're not one-to-one? And if you don't know what one-to-one means, it means one technology device per one student.
So at what point in delivering content is it appropriate to use a web quest?
And anything.
Let me ask this. When is it not appropriate? And I'll answer that question in a minute. But here's the thing. Can you trust your elementary kids with this?
What grade?
My wife's a third grader.
Yeah.
Could she
Your
handle?
wife's a third grader?
As a third grade teacher.
You like
Yeah, I like keeping my expectations low. We used to joke because she originally out of high school wanted to go into special ed, and I said, ding ding, you got on-site training right here. Anyway, she uses her own cell phone on a daily basis because their school is not one-to-one. The students are actively using her cell phone to demonstrate they're learning. Doggone it, let me get my pride out of the way. Let me hand a student my phone. I've handed high school kids my phone and said, go to YouTube, watch the video, and when you're done, give it back. You know what? When you treat a high school kid like an adult, they respond like an adult. When you treat them like an immature kid, they respond like an immature kid. Never had a student break my phone. Never had a student break an iPad. And I've handed it over to probably close to 1,000. This setting right here, we have 7 people, 4 devices. I guarantee we could figure out a way that at least 2, maybe 3 of you could be in front of a device and you could guide your own learning. A web quest is just the opportunity. You asked a great question. When is a web quest appropriate? I would ask, when is a web quest not appropriate? But let's break it down. When you have just basic fundamental knowledge that you want to convey, basic. You're introducing a new concept. Basic level of Bloom's taxonomy. Why not have them go find it on their own? In the meantime, while you're doing a 15-minute web quest, that gives me 15 minutes of targeted intervention time with that kid who was not here yesterday. Or that kid who they're still cycling through his ADHD medication and now he's asleep. I got to go target that kid. It gives you the opportunity to get out of the front and become cloned. You're in more than one place at a time. You're learning, right? Going through the web quest, you are learning the new concept that I want you to learn. And yet, I'm not the one teaching you. You're teaching yourself. That's why integrating technology is powerful.
When you first talked about it, I was thinking in terms of like, I've delivered, a small slice of content now. I expect the students to go on a web quest to find.
And go deeper?
Yes.
What's wrong with that too? We're just talking about it in 2 different applications, right? What's wrong with that? Let's say that, I want to say Deborah. Nope, she didn't look at me. Darla. I got the at the end. Let's say Darla's son. Perfect example. Darla's son already has the prior knowledge. Send him on a web quest that sends him 2, 3, 4 grades ahead. And he's not dealing with this base, do you understand? He's dealing with, I want you to go create something. See over there, there's a maker station. There's nothing but cardboard and straws and tape. Go create something. And I promise you, if you come back with something, I will say it's okay. You cannot get this wrong. Just go create something. Now all of a sudden he's empowered. I can't get it wrong. There is no wrong answer.
Perfect, yes, perfect in everything.
He's OCD?
He's perfect.
Oh my goodness! If you find a student who's a perfectionist, when you walk by, I'm sorry, this is really difficult. Watch him freak out.
I really would know what the
See, that's what about it though, if he does something, it has to be perfect. He gets careless, he'd screw up.
And here's the thing, if that student is empowered with their own learning, listen, are they gonna be okay with mediocrity? That student is not gonna stop until they're at least proficient, if not mastery. All of a sudden, you just empower a student with their own learning, and listen, you didn't sweat a drop. You just did your job in a very effective way, and it didn't take you 1 ounce of energy. Listen, at the end of the day, you should not be exhausted. You know who should be whooped? Kids. And if you are flat out fried exhausted, you're doing too much. Give it over to the student. And that's tough. It's difficult to hand student learning over to kids. And listen, it's a process. It'll take you time and it'll take them time. But you know what? By the end of it, all of a sudden teaching will be so relaxing. You'll be ready for round 2 that same night. Let's do this again. Because you still have energy. The kids will go home exhausted. Parents will come into parent-teacher conferences. What are you doing to my kid? They're sleeping great every night. They're learning. And they are in charge of their own learning. Okay, so if I go back to the web quest, and let's just navigate this site really basically. Let's go to useful or find web quests. I was going to go to useful resources, but let's just find web quest. Quest garden search and search the garden database, and let's just type in any of these words. Where are we at? Jericho, give me a topic that you're using in your lesson plan.
Mitosis.
Spell mitosis.
MITOSIS.
Doesn't look like one. Let's try it. Let's try something different.
It's MY.
No.
Isn't it?
Functions.
I didn't need to build a thing. I'm using what somebody else has built. And listen, the first time I use one of these, could it flop?
Yep.
The second time I use it, am I going to make it better? The third time I use it, is it going to be exactly what I wanted it to do? Absolutely.
Could go back to the beginning again. Could be a flop again.
Depends on you. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's be fair. If you roll one of these out 1 year and it rock stars, man, home run first time. The second year, because you have different kids, different learning styles, different levels, you might have to adapt that a little bit going in. But that's also where you as a teacher, you're a psychologist. You have to know your client intimately to where you can say, I'm going to have to modify this before I ever roll it out to him. That's a web quest. And let's just kind of click one of these. Student Government Association. Never opened this. Let's actually go through it. Central State University. So this isn't just some podunk, backwoods high school teacher building this. This is somebody who's at the college level. Blah, 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 blah. Notice that it's got a HTML site, so they're sending the student out. By the way, this is not a standalone activity. You don't just assign the students to this page. There's got to be a reason they're going to the page. There's got to be a task to complete on the page. And then they've got to come back, and they should be doing some kind of activity to reflect on. How did it go? Did you find what you were looking for? If you didn't find what you were looking for, where did you look?
Can you explain HTML?
Okay. All right. Ready? There's 2 different types of formats for web design. There's rich text and HTML. HTML is the processed code. I mean, it's basically everything but the zeros and ones. You want to see HTML? If I right-click on this screen and go to inspect, that's HTML. Do you understand that?
No.
Okay, I just started learning it because I have to be able to write HTML code. I don't ever want to do it, but it's part of my job at this point. The HTML is a specific designed identifying location on the internet.
So when I see that as an instructor, is that a positive attribute that that's at the end?
It's just a website.
Okay.
As opposed to .pdf, .doc. PDF is it's a data file, and it's uneditable, and I can't remember what the P is standing for, but a document. It just depends on what you're looking for. Really, the most important part is this right up here. Do you see an S? That's an unsecured site. There's a difference between HTTP and HTTPS. The S stands for secure. Google has an S on it. It's a secure site. You can't post something to Google without them saying, okay, this is okay. Unsecured sites, just be careful, because advertisement can change like that and you didn't know it. Just make sure you're previewing unsecured sites. You get what I'm saying, right? Okay. Let's get into that. Yeah, no problem. So again, this web quest looks like it's taking them, and then notice a separate HTML down at the bottom. It looks like these are two separate sites for two different pieces of information. I would ask you, what questions are you going to build to determine whether or not the students went there and obtain some level of knowledge? You don't just send them on an activity to see if you can do a web quest. There's got to be an idea. Are they obtaining the idea? Are you asking them questions to determine whether or not they obtained the idea? And let's be fair, them just getting the information is not learning. That's just research. You told me to search for this, I found this, now what do you want me to do with it? Now we're going to talk about it. And then that's where you as the teacher might go in and spend 15 minutes on a mile-deep lesson over whatever it was that you wanted them to talk about. The legislative board. The officers of a legislative body. But a web quest is a way for you to integrate technology and listen, get out of the front of the room. Can you create one? Absolutely. You're essentially going to have one here in a minute. It's not a web quest designed for you to learn something. It's a web quest. You have activities, and this document kind of lets me get out of the way, and you do the activities. So a web quest is a way for you to integrate technology on a instructional level. Flipped and blended. Let's be very clear. I'm not talking about an online classroom when I say flipped or blended. Online means you don't see the instructor. The instructor is nothing more than a moderator on the back end of a chat. They check assignments, they send you an email with feedback. A flipped environment means last night for homework, you didn't answer a bunch of questions, you didn't solve a bunch of problems. You prepared yourself for the lesson today. That way my instruction is nothing more than us practicing together and us determining how proficient you are. Now all of a sudden, instead of my class time being me up here talking, it's you practicing whatever it was that you learned last night. That's flipped. Blended is this beautiful mix between face-to-face instruction and a flipped environment. And there is no one right way. When you say blended, you're basically meaning anything between face-to-face, F to F. If you ever are on Twitter and you see the letters F, the number 2, and then F, face-to-face. Blended just means something between face-to-face and completely online. Blended can be anywhere on that spectrum. Flipped has a very definitive connotation with it. But listen, a flipped and a blended setting are a way to integrate technology. Now all of a sudden, you had to go home last night and read the book. That was your assignment. I'm not reading the book for you today in class. We're talking about the 5 key points, and by talking, I mean we're spending 10 minutes. 2 minutes per idea, we're going 100 miles an hour. And if you didn't read the book, you're behind. How do you do that in an elementary class? I'm not an elementary teacher. Let's sit down and talk, though, because it's possible. People are flipping elementary classes. Not every subject area, but it is possible. Now, all of a sudden, we've talked about the ideas. Are there any questions? Your questions cannot be right here. Well, I didn't understand what it meant by mitosis. Oh, the definition was right after it in the book. Look on page 29. Any other questions? You're putting the student back in charge of their own learning. Because if you really did do this last night, all I'm doing is checking for this. Was there something that you legitimately didn't understand so that when I start practicing with you, you can apply? Which is actually the next point of conversation that we're going to talk about. But A flipped and a blended setting allow you the opportunity to come into the classroom and already start fluctuating right here. Do the students understand the concept? Yes or no? Are we ready to apply it? Yes or no? Do I need to remediate? Yes or no? A flipped and a blended just kind of starts the class off already priming the pump, as opposed to, oh, I hope everybody had a good sleep last night. We're gonna spend the first 15 minutes of class reading. The second 15 minutes of class, you're gonna write down in your journals. And the last half of class, we're only down to 30 minutes, so I can't really practice with you a whole lot. You're gonna have to practice on your own at home. No, I want my kids practicing in front of me. And as a math teacher, I loved being able to look at a parent and say, you will never have to do one math problem with them. Don't worry about it. You make them watch a video of me teaching. That's all you got to do. Just make them watch a video. Let me handle the practice. Because that's my job. I hated sending home practice with parents. The population that I worked with, more than likely one of the two parents did not finish high school. And I don't mean like they got a GED. I mean they dropped out. One of the two parents, if not both. I don't want to send home geometry homework. Are you kidding me? I know that population. So instead, mom, dad, just make sure the kid watches the video. Here's the notes. Just make sure the notes are filled out. You might not understand what they wrote. Make sure it's filled out. Let me handle the rest. You know how much that empowers the parent? Now all of a sudden the parent's on your side. The parent's an advocate, and the kid has to come to class the next day prepared. Let's say they didn't. Your population out of 30 kids is not going to be 29 kids that didn't watch the video. 1, 2, 3, 4. The one kid who was up late because they were in an athletic event. The one kid who couldn't sleep because mom and dad were fighting again. We're talking about a small population. Great. I want all of you who couldn't watch the video last night to come over here to this table. Watch the video right now. I'm going to go remediate. Then, when I'm done remediating and they're done watching the video, I'm going to come remediate to them. And I can give more kids that one-on-one attention that they need, all because of just flipping the environment. And no, you can't flip every possible thing, but you know what? You can try. It is a great way to just blanket answer a bunch of questions. Is it difficult? Yeah. Does it take a lot of time and energy to front load? Yeah, but you're pre-service teachers. You don't have a classroom that's been established for 15 or 20 years. You could go into a classroom and start flipping stuff. How do you do it? Just take the assignment of the class and put it as homework the night before. Now all of a sudden your homework becomes classwork. That's flipped. What does that look like for you? I don't know. I don't know what class you teach. But I have no problem sitting down with you and let's talk about flipping. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and there's a massive group across the United States that thinks flipping is the way to go. The Center for Teaching at Vanderbilt requires their teachers to flipping the classroom. I just used this site as one of my sources for my last class, or my last professional development. Notice that this instructor actually cites Bloom's taxonomy, goes through the inverted classroom, peer instruction, does it work, the research behind it, the theoretical basis, which brings in a ton of reflection and metacognition. What are the key elements of a flipped class? Between this and the University of Texas at Austin, the professors have flipped their classes because they realize how much more they get out of the students in that time. Flipping the class, blending the class is a great way to integrate technology into the classroom. What does that look like for you? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Questions on flipping or blending? Okay. If we go back to the agenda, formative assessment. This is not something that we can take a short amount of time on, but it is something that you are going to have to understand. You will be learning about formative assessment probably for the next 15 or 20 years. Can you go into your first year teaching or your student teaching already knowing a little bit about formative assessment? Absolutely. Be empowered. You're not going to know everything. Formative assessment is a big monster, and it keeps evolving too. The idea of formative assessment, listen to me, everybody put your screens down. The idea of formative assessment is assessing students at a micro level that determines how you instruct. We get so used to assessment being after the fact. How did I do? How did I do as an instructor? Did they get what I wanted them to get? Formative assessment is one question, one activity in the moment that determines, are they ready to move on or do I need to remediate? And it looks differently. Could be something as simple as, all right, everybody, that question over there, I want you to write down, and that's going to be your exit ticket. You're going to hand that to me. That's how we're going to end class. And then tomorrow, based on your exit ticket, I'll determine, do we need to remediate Or are we ready to move on? That's one method of formative assessment. How do you do that with technology? There are already websites and tools to allow you to formatively assess. We're going to go over 3. So do me a favor, everybody go to the agenda. Right now, everybody go to the agenda. And everybody right now, if you haven't already done so, click on formative assessment. That's going to send you to a Google Doc. And this is an example of a web quest. Your job is to not obtain information. Your job is to simply explore 3 different tools. One of them is called Go Formative, one of them is called Socrative, and one of them is called Google Apps for Education. Listen to me, and I want you to look me in the eye when I say this. Look me in the eye and blink twice. Blink twice. Some of you aren't blinking. Some of you are winking at me. That's kind of creepy. Listen, they're free. Nothing tickles an admin's ear more than you can say, I know how to use this tool, and it's free. Now all of a sudden that admin goes, oh, this isn't going to cost me a thing. It's free online? Perfect. There is no lose. These are 3 free tools that you can use. All it requires is a login. The students don't even need login information for it. Well, for 2 of the 3. The other third they do. What I want you to do is, listen. Whoever's highlighting the screen, thank you. There's 3 questions on 3 separate sites. Listen to the question. What's the difference between formative assessment and summative assessment? You have to do a little bit of research to determine that. You can just do a quick Google search, formative assessment. Define formative assessment. What's the difference between formative and summative? I want you to answer that question on all 3 of those sites. Then you've got to answer, why is formative assessment important? Why is it important? Because I'll tell you right now, it is a massive buzzword in the educational world. Your admin will come in and say, how are you, not if you are formatively assessment, how are you formatively assessing these students? Because if you are just teaching and then giving them an assessment, you're wrong. How do you know that the students obtained the information and are ready to apply it? Are you guessing? Because formative assessment is that process in between. So do a little bit of research on what formative and summative are, your opinion on why formative assessment, and then listen, how should formative assessment be integrated into your instructional practices? So in your lesson plan, where would you put formative assessment? Excuse me. In your lesson plan, you would say, at this moment, I'm going to formatively assess, and this is how I would do it. I'm going to ask the students this question, and I'm going to use this tool to, in the moment, analyze what they're doing. How many of you are familiar with the clickers? The immediate response handheld devices? Okay. That's an example of formative assessment. Answer that question, A, B, C, or D. Go. You have 30 seconds, like AFV, America's Funniest Home Videos, where they choose A, B, C, or D. In the moment response. Instantaneous. No grading on your part as a teacher, but you still get a gauge on how the students are. They ready? They not ready? Do you need to remediate? Or are they ready to practice? What I want you to do is I want you to spend 15 minutes and then notice Go Formative, Socrative, and then Google Apps for Education. Go through those 3, and then we're going to talk about, listen, we're going to talk about the tools, not necessarily the questions about formative assessment, but the tools in, let's say, 15 minutes.
Go through those 3 sites to answer those 3 questions.
You're going to have to do a little bit of research on formative assessment first. But then, yes, click on that. It's going to send you to a link. Okay? All you've got to do is click, what is it? Continue without login, because you don't have a login information. I didn't give you one as a student. And it sends you to 3 questions. You click submit. You're going to have to enter your name. Click submit. You're done. This one, you're going to click student login and then enter a code that sends you to my specific class. You don't need some unique login that you've got to always remember and forget. Nope. Go to this site, enter that code, you're there. And then Google Apps for Education, I can just share with you. And while you do that activity, I'm going to go get some water because I got chalk.
Are you going to make it so that we can link it, or you just want us to copy and paste it?
Which one can't you link?
We can't click on any of them.
You can click on it and go on the one that's under.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, never mind.
Hey.
I'm with you.
All right, I'll be right back. And remember that is broadcasting, so if you want to talk about me, say it really loud.
I know.
Jericho, what's it?
Do you make a new Google document, or is the first one that you click, do you answer on that screen?
This is really okay. You don't need a Google Doc at all for this. It's okay if you just kind of mentally process it and then just use those 3 sites to kind of brain dump.
So research before you go.
Yeah, because if you don't know what formative assessment is, you can't differentiate between formative and
It'll
summative.
bring up click on the
Alright.
one.
Wait, that's
There's
right,
a
that's
page
what I was
that tells you either to sign in,
Oh, continue without logging in.
one does, and then the next one you have to put in that code. And the last one you just sign in, it brings it up. You have to do them all to make sure they're, or else up door.
The other graduating teacher, wanna ask, yeah, she texted me and was like, my kid, which she didn't give it to me. She said, can you be my backup in case I need you tomorrow? Absolutely. She like kept talking to me. Yes. And I was like, oh.
So please, you can see expenses to just.
Yes.
All right, so I'm talking
So
about
I have to go.
And then you put it in
Well,
notes.
I think you put in
Junior
your
spaces.
Under her, she never got hold of the lady, so wants to talk to about that stuff.
So I have no idea, so I have to go to that, so I have to report at noon tomorrow.
And what's nice is for your pre-service, for your student teaching, you can set your own accounts up for these. You don't have to be a teacher with this special email. They're free to, create. So. Can you use any of these?
No, but I looked up, mysteries, cause I'm doing a mystery unit in reading right now, and I've been looking for something like, I mean, they've been acting stuff out.
For instruction or formative?
Either, so I think it would be fun for them to do like a mystery webcast class on here, and the one that I looked at on here, it had them like, reading one, and then they had to write their own, so that would be kind of cool.
My wife sends her kids, because she does like a mystery with literature, so after they've read a piece of literature, she sends them on a scavenger hunt in her room.
Yeah.
Where, there's like 4 teams, each clue is labeled 4 books, stuff like that, and then they've got to kind of go through this mystery of like who saw or who did what, and she didn't build any of that. She found those online, and then she's adapted them over the 7 years that she's been in the classroom.
So can I ask you a question? So
No, you're asking, why ask me if you can ask, if you're just gonna ask anyway, go.
I went to the first one and I went to the second one, and it looks as though.
Okay, the second one, you have to click student login.
I did that, okay.
Did you
I
enter the
all
code?
that. But so, what I'm getting, what I thought I would get would be, information about your questions, but I'm just getting your questions again.
Yeah, because you had to do your own research.
So I have to just like Google what the difference is first, and then put the information in. Alrighty, you probably set that.
I'm not gonna lie, part of my attention issues, I can't remember what I said.
That was just old age. That's for me.
I can't claim old age.
Oh,
It's amazing how,
once you have children, you're old. And you just get rid
I don't
of it
understand that.
exponentially.
No, I had a kid at 25, 25's not
I know,
old.
I was gonna say, I'm 23, that does not make me old, I have a kid.
How old is your kid?
No, have one, I feel you're not old, then you get 2, then exponentially,
People would say
every year.
that 30s were rough for them. I get beat by guys in my triathlon in their 40s and 50s. So if that's what is awaiting ahead of me, 30 is just halfway there. I'm pumped. That's my mindset.
I know my father-in-law does like triathlons and all that stuff, and he's just turned 50 this year, he's in way better shape than I ever was.
It's amazing. They created an 80 up division in the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii.
That's awesome.
2.1 miles or 2.2 mile swim, 150 mile bike ride, and then a 26.2 mile run. And there's an 80 and
I'm
up
not
division.
trying to, I'm just typing, I know it's.
Good gracious, what are we doing sitting on our tails?
So I can put that in without, because I do too.
About 7 more minutes. And again, right now, it's not as much about what formative assessment is, it's as much about the tool, the integration of technology into.
Okay, good.
I'm not grading your grammar, for goodness sake.
Math major, just put it on.
Thank you. That was even my history minor. I argued with some professors on, was the content there? So are you assessing my content or my literacy? What's that? Okay. It does if you as a teacher are including those standards in your instruction, but you can't assess me on my writing if you're not instructing me on that.
No, but if you're going to a job interview, you want to speak grammatically correct language, right? Because it can.
Yeah,
work
I'm not
against
gonna
you.
lie. I can have somebody that's a better typer than me fill in information, and then when I go into the interview, if I'm a dynamic, amazing personality, I'll blow you away.
Okay.
I like that. I've been thinking quietly.
This is the other thing. As teachers, you'll find yourself not eating right or well. Your eating habits will go down the toilet. Learn how to snack.
We really need to learn how to do that.
Learn how to snack, because that way when you're done at work, you don't go home and binge. If you snack throughout the day, you'll eat a moderate lunch, you'll eat a medium dinner, and you won't all of a sudden hurt when you get up out of your chair. We have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah. I got a 0% on my quiz.
Using almost all words. I don't let any go to waste. Notice that, and I tried to so many times. Oh, I did twice and I got a hang of it. Like, man, I was using every single.
Each answer is going to be shorter and shorter.
So then to try to do something in short.
And then they're good at making shorter and shorter.
Then it's like I'm not doing this.
And for the sake of time, I need you to finish the tool that you're on. For the sake of time, finish the tool you're on and then lower your screen. All right, how many of you got through at least one tool? How many of you got through 2 tools? Okay. All right, so here's what I want to show you. It does no good to stop a lesson and ask some questions about content if you don't have a way to actually analyze the information afterwards. How are you going to determine, with intelligent data, that the students are either ready to move on or that you need to reteach? So what's nice about, and this is go formative first, what's nice about Go Formative is I created it. I have control over the results. Let me tell you this. It is one of the fastest tools that you can use to create questions. It's one of the fastest tools to just create questions because all you got to do is click build, and then preview, and then send. Well, I can click question 1, and then notice the responses. I can see your responses. Now, this is open-ended, right? These are open-ended questions. It would take me time as a teacher to read these. But because it's a live result, I can read them on my iPad while I'm walking around. I can read them as you click enter, move to the next tool. It's real time, you guys. It's not this, fill out this paper, oh crap, I gotta spend time tonight grading the paper, but tonight's my kid's soccer game, so I'm gonna have to grade it at soccer practice. No, it's real time, you can do this in class. Let me just show you, if I wanna build a brand new quiz. Well, that's first one, second one, third one, that's viewing them individually. If I want to view a summary of the whole thing, I can view who completed what question. I noticed that Jerica probably wrote me a paragraph or a book.
No, I skipped it.
Did you really? Okay.
I thought we didn't have to type it. You said in your head. So I was
Right.
like, oh, cool.
Notice,
Oh.
and here's the thing, these are not graded, right? This just shows me participation based. Did Deborah do all 3? Yep. Did Alex do all 3? Yep. And again, the students, you didn't need an account to do this. I could have had every one of you, if I'm in a small community and I don't have one-to-one, I could have had everybody this on their iPad or on that Chromebook. One device, pass it around. Now, I would have had to have done a lot of instruction to begin with. That way you don't have to do the research and then answer. I would have wanted to instruct and then pass it around, do the formative assessment. Right? I could have done that.
What are the kids doing that are waiting for their turn? Are they just?
Maybe they're practicing more problems on the board from the concept. Maybe they're getting out their books because we just finished reading, and maybe they're continuing to read. Maybe they're getting ready to, maybe they're picking their lunch for the day, hot, cold. Maybe they're looking, maybe they're getting out their math worksheet packets that they've been working on throughout the week, because in elementary school, you spend 1 week on all of multiplication. And every day you just work on it more and more and more.
So if it's high school, it could be something like, they have a novel that they've been working on.
Sure.
Or something.
And here's the thing. How long would it take Alex to answer those 3 questions and then pass it to Jerica, pass it to Diane, pass it along? 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. But I'm gonna, in that time, I'm gonna be able to accurately assess, are my kids ready or not? And if I'm doing my job correctly, and I think I closed the stupid thing. If I did my job correctly, I should be able to identify where you're at based on your response. One of my first questions is going to be down here. One of my other questions is going to be right here, and then one of my last questions is going to be up here. And so Alex, on 3 questions, I should be able to get a rough gauge on where he's at, where Jerica's at, where Diane is at. If I did my job and created quality questions that actually assess learning, not just, did you do it, yes or no? How much do you agree? Strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, a Likert scale, really? How do you assess the level of learning with a Likert scale? You're assessing participation and opinion. So that's one tool. And let me show you how easy it is to incorporate in your classroom. If I go back to Go Formative, and I click Build, go away. I can sit here and edit this. I can add a new question. Notice that I can add content. If I want a video, if I want to embed a video and then have questions about that video, if I want to embed text and then ask questions about that text. Notice the 4 different types of questions. Are you limited with Go Formative? Yes, but you're limited to multiple choice, show your work, short answer, or true false. Can you right now think of another assessment type other than those 4? Not when you're playing around on your laptop, you can't. Those are the main 4 assessment items. Allows the student to go as deep as they can in their thinking. Basic, you are either right or you're wrong. True, false, 50-50. Multiple guess, basically. Show your work. Loved it. Because I can tier it and I can base it on a rubric. You just started the problem. You get the least amount of points. You went all the way to the bottom, but got it wrong. You get 3 out of 4. That's how basic and how beautiful Go Formative is. Really simple, but it does what you want it to do. It assesses student learning. So, could you use this in your instructional integration? Maybe your instruction was, well, we read a book, or we listened to a presenter on Native American culture. There's no technology there. It's a presenter. But I can incorporate that technology into the formative assessment. And here's what's tough. When you say the words formative assessment, you're not talking about assessment that goes into the grade book. You're not. Formative assessment determines, are they ready to move on, or do I need to reteach? Ready to move on, need to reteach. In the moment, real-time data that determines where are my students at. Now that was Go Formative. Let's go over Socrative. And notice up here it's giving me live results. I'm just going to click that. And if I want to break these down further, I just click on the question number, excuse me. Goes through this. What's nice about this is right now, as you look at the screen as a class, can you tell who wrote what? Can you tell where Darla's answers are? So do the students feel a little bit more empowered to take a risk? Because nobody can judge them on, oh, who wrote that? You have no idea. It may have been me as a teacher writing in a crap answer. Because that little kid who got it wrong, gets it wrong all the time, nobody's looking at him right now. Oh, that was me. I was just goofing around, you guys. Everybody's looking at me, taking their attention off that kid who needs attention taken off of them. Love this idea. Again, incredibly basic. But you know what? It's free and one device. One device, because you need a website and then an access code. One device, and I could have everybody in here use Socrative. And what's nice about Socrative is not only can you ask just a basic question, you can just start a quiz right in the middle of class. While you're, so in my flipped classroom, in the first 5 minutes, took attendance, asked questions. Did you do it? Did you understand it? No questions over the content? All right, now let's talk about the depth of knowledge that you have. Do you just basically understand it and need to practice more? Or are you ready to apply it because you kind of are good at it? Or do you need to be challenged? Well, in the moment, I can go over there and create a question like that. And if I write a good quality assessment based on your response or her response, I should be able to determine what level you're at. And that kind of feeds into making sure that you're writing good quality assessments. Not only that, but look at this. I can actually create a space race, which is a competition among students.
That one's fun. We use this website a lot in my group dynamics class.
Okay.
And it was really, I like the fact that it can be anonymous because.
Here's the thing. It's only anonymous for you. I can still go in and look at the diagnosis.
But the students feel more comfortable because we had people that, were really bad at spelling.
Oh, yeah.
Or had no clue, really what we were talking about, but they could still answer because you're not going to be made fun of. You don't have to speak out loud.
Absolutely. And let's be fair. When it comes to my high school kids, some of them need just a little bit of entertainment. They've been schooled out, especially at the end of the day. They're physically drained. You know what? For that 7th hour, I might have to make this a game. Same exact stuff, same questions, same content, still expectations. I'm not lowering crap for anybody. I just have to deliver it in a game because they need that energy level up. And high schools look down on you when you just pump kids full of coffee at the end of the day. Not that I would know that. So not only can you do that, you can do the exit ticket. Quick question. We just read this text. How well did you listen? Quick question. Just something off the cuff. You know what? I got a quick question for you guys. Put your computers down. You just think about it. Just something really, really quick. And then, of course, an exit ticket where students submit it. You go in and look at it later. But again, I can analyze all of this data in real time as you're taking it, because it's spitting out live results.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, obviously in a perfect world, each kid has a laptop, right? Because if I'm doing a quick question where they're passing it around, it's not so quick anymore.
I'm gonna have to modify it for that scenario, absolutely. Does that mean I don't use the tool because I'm not in a one-to-one? No. You figure out a way to use it.
Right.
How many of you guys have a cell phone in here? Oh, look at that. Imagine a world where no laptops, but everybody has a cell phone. That's weird. This is a web-based activity.
I was just gonna ask about that, you talked about that and using in the school, but, you know, any school I've been to and around is like, don't you dare bring your phone in, leave them, you know,
Yeah.
So how do you, like,
You're
is that
generalizing
changing?
schools? Yes.
But
In
for your
fact,
class, you can say.
I
You
would-
can say in your district, you can say that that's changing, but I mean, that.
No, it's changing in the state. That's not the schools, the districts that are still saying don't bring your cell phone to class are the schools that are failing. New York State, because New York has a consolidated city school system. They said leave your phone off campus. If we see it, we confiscate it, no questions asked. That's weird, because they completely dynamically changed that rule 2 years later.
Well, you can say, okay, I mean, so I want the cell phone turned off and put away, but okay, now we're gonna do this activity, pull your cell phone out and turn it on. You know what I mean? You can.
Is this a tool can this tool be used for bad things?
Yes.
Okay. Can it be used for bad things? No, it cannot. No, it can't. I can't access it. Now, you as a teacher, is it your job to make sure, Jake, stop touching the phone? I'm sorry. Jake, stop touching the phone. Yes, but that's classroom management. You don't blame that tool for my mistake. What's wrong with having high school kids? And to be fair, elementary teachers, you're not going to deal with this.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
I'd say half of my fifth graders have cell phones.
Okay, fifth graders, but here's the thing. The majority of schools in Michigan, fifth grade is no longer elementary. Fifth grade is middle school. So your middle school kid probably has one of these. Give them the option of using them, but here's the thing. Just like I want Darla to stop typing, so I'm going to tell her to put her screen down. Put her screen down. There we go. That's classroom management. What's wrong with having this on the desk? Screens down. You can't use that. I told my high school kids, this is fine any day of the week unless we're taking a test. You can't have it out. The moment it goes like this, I assume you're texting or taking a picture. Both of them are no-nos. I will take your phone. But that doesn't mean I don't let you have your phone out. It's my job to make sure that I'm doing my job in classroom managing. Now, if your administrator comes in and your kids are doing a formative assessment with cell phones, and that administrator says, don't care, figure a different way out, fine. You just document my evaluation that I was using formative assessment. We're not a one-to-one school. I was doing it the best way I could. You document that, and I won't do it again. You don't document it, I'll see you in here next week. And then when you document that, I'll stop. And yeah, you might have to have some cojones and say, then you tell me how to formatively assess. Because the way that I'm doing it, you don't like. You tell me what to do. I'll do it your way. You might have to spin it back around. And me as an administrator, I better have some freaking tools in my kit. But at the same time, if I'm a good administrator and you're a good teacher, you're effective. Kids aren't dinking around on cell phones. Am I looking for an excuse or am I looking for an opportunity? Anybody's got an excuse. Oh, that one kid would abuse it. That's an excuse. Or are you looking for an opportunity to integrate an effective method? You can't tell me that this is not effective. Now it's just a question of how am I going to get it in my class? And in the elementary, I don't know. Because in the elementary, you might have one or two desks at the back. You might have to have kids cycle back through that. But you know what? Don't think of an excuse. Figure out a way to make it work. Problem solve. Be flexible. Does that mean that your kids are going to have to do multiple things at the same time? Yeah. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with this group doing the math worksheets because this group is doing the formative assessment tool? That's Socrative. The last one, and some of you may not have even gotten to it. That's not a big deal. The last one is Google Apps for Education. Now, when I say Google Apps for Education, or UCGAFE, that is encompassing anything Google. The question is, how are you using it in education? It's a free app, but how are you using it in education? I can use a Google form to obtain the exact same information And then what's nice about Google Forms is it immediately kicks it out. And this is the view, or this is your version, not my version. I can immediately turn it into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. And I don't know, I haven't looked at this, but notice this is what's nice about Google Schools. When Darla accesses this, the Google form immediately grabs her email. I can record Darla's responses. You think it's anonymous, but the Google app immediately grabbed your identification. I'm not going to let you know that. I want you to be honest. And if you know that I can identify a response with A. Keel, D. Villa, D. Plum, then you no longer know it's anonymous. That's on my job as a teacher. I've used this. This is a beautiful tool. The only thing is that you just make sure you slide that sheet all the way to the left so the students can't see the responses. We did this in an inquiry-based lesson where there was an area problem. If you don't know what area is, it's just a math problem. Where there was an area problem, the students had to go through a Google form and answer some questions on that. Then we displayed the results. I did no instruction. Based on the results, I told the groups, talk about the results, talk to your group about how you solved that problem, and then you're going to answer another set of questions. Exact same concept, skills that I was assessing, new problem, new numbers. I did no instruction, but using this feature of Google Forms, every one of those kids got that right without me teaching. Didn't have to teach area, and the kids taught themselves. Imagine that. Get out of the front of the classroom and let the kids use the tools. Now, are the kids creating anything? No. But if the kids already know area, I don't have to teach it. Now I can all of a sudden start working on, let's create area. Create something with an area of 40 square centimeters, 40 square inches. Create something out of scratch that's the same area of a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. Go, find something in the classroom. And teach the students how to create something. But Google Apps for Education is free. Now here's the tough part. If you're not a Google school, does that mean that you might have to create your own Google account? How many of you already have a Gmail account? Oh, that's, okay, how many of you have a Gmail account outside of Baker? All but one. You already have access to Google Apps for Education with your personal account. What's wrong with using a personal account at school? Are you abusing it? Are you using it wrong? No, you're going to use it for education because it's free. Because you already have access to it. Those are 3 free tools. And it's, again, the conversation in education is not, should we formatively assess? No. The question is, how are you doing it in your class? What does formative assessment look like in Jerica's class? Year 1. How are your interview? Could you imagine having this question as an interview? Our school is really big on formative assessment. FAME, F-A-M-E, the Formative Assessment Management Organization. It's not organization, it's E something. The FAME group going across the state. We're a FAME school. How do you incorporate formative assessment? Year 1. Let me tell you. I use GoFormative. I use Scrative. I use my Google Apps for Education. You're not a Google school. I can use my own account. I don't have a problem with that. It's for the kids. Here's the thing. You have options now of how to integrate technology into the instructional practices of your very first lesson. You're going to have the kids do a web quest. You're going to think about flipping or blending your class or your first lesson. You're going to incorporate formative assessment. And let's be clear, formative assessment is still part of the instructional phase because it's at a critical point where you're either determining, do I need to reteach or am I done teaching? Is the instruction over or do I need to remediate? It's not going in the grade book, it's for me and for the kids.
So if I say I use a formative assessment that's not technology-based, the interview committee possibly thinks that I'm old school and not up on.
They might ask you what you're doing. There are methods. There are methods
Some
of
of them are
formative
like
assessment.
ridiculously simple, like thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb sideways.
I used it. I used that probably 100 times throughout a year because it's instantaneous, and no, I don't need technology for it. At the same time, let me be very clear. There are some methods that are not effective anymore. And what are they? I don't know. I use thumbs up, thumb sideways, or thumbs down for an instantaneous, immediate reaction. But I also know the longevity of these. Because let's use Alex. If Alex is a struggling student, at the beginning of the year, I have formative assessment data. Not a thumbs up, thumb sideways, thumbs down. I have documentation that he was struggling at the beginning of the year. I can then document my interventions with that, Alex. Then, throughout the middle of the year, his more formative assessment, I have documentation. Whether it's a Google Sheet or whether it's my Socrative account, GoFormative account, I have documentation. And I can go into any meeting with his parents, with my admin, and say, these are what I tried. Does that make sense? You can't really document and prove a thumbs up, thumb sideways, thumbs
And
down.
I'm just trying to think of, if that would be the kiss of death if you mentioned things that were not technology-based.
Not necessarily. I'll tell you right now, if you Googled formative assessment tools, tricks, trades, whatever, there's going to be a lot that are not technology-based. There's not. Here's the thing. We're in a technology integration class.
Right.
So are you going to integrate technology into the instructional practices of your class? If you are, or your lesson, excuse me. If you are, what does that look like? And I'm sorry, you don't get to say, well, we're in a computer lab. Every kid's already using technology. That's not reality, especially in the elementary world. They might get pulled out for a keyboarding class, a typing class, once a week, 45 minutes. Is that really integration? Because I wouldn't think so. No, I don't agree. Any questions? And to be fair, you're not the one teaching them. Normally, it's a media center specialist. It is some kind of a fine arts teacher that got handed that in their other duties as a signed contract. Questions on the instructional piece? Okay. So what I want you to do is by Monday night of next week, your lesson plan number 1 needs to be done. Okay? Lesson plan 1 needs to be done. Now what we're going to talk about is another component of this class, which is the Technology Integration Grant. Technology Integration Grant. And this is going to take us all the way up to the 9 o'clock hour. When it hits 9 o'clock, feel free to get up and walk out, even if I'm in mid-sentence, because wherever it hits at 9 o'clock, that's where we'll start next week. So if I go back to our agenda, we're on the Technology Grant Integration discussion. And here's what I want to ask you. We already went over Google Classroom, so. And think about this, don't just say it out loud. What ideal technology would you use in your classroom? And be very specific. Don't say it out loud, think about it. If you had a blank check for technology integration into your classroom, I'm not asking you right now how you would use it, I'm just asking you what you would use. What would you use in an ideal world? 1-to-1, what would every student have in front of them? Now, I'm that person signing that blank check. Why did you pick what you picked? Because it's cool and it has a bunch of apps. It's touchscreen. Because it has a keyboard and kids need to know how to type. You can't really take pictures with that though. I can take pictures with this, but typing in this sucks. Owasso Public Schools right now is in this discussion right here. Blank check. What are you going to buy? You're going 1-to-1. It's not a question of if. You're going 1-to-1. Which one are you going to buy? Because whichever one you buy, you've got to train your teachers for. You got to make sure your network can handle it. Make sure your switches. Make sure everything can handle all of the students on those. Which one are you going to use? Now listen, you picked something. I don't care what it is. Don't care. The Technology Integration Grant activity, you have to be able to pick some piece of technology. But then In the plan, you have to be able to justify why you picked that. Why did you pick an iPad over a Chromebook? Why did you pick a Chromebook over a MacBook or an iMac? Not portable, but man, they're huge. You can do so many more things. You can split screen it. Basically have two screens side by side at the same time. For the activity, it has to fall into one of those 5 areas. You have to be able to prove that you would use that technology in a perfect world in the areas of either instruction, assessment, collaboration, communication, or the 21st century skills of critical thinking and problem solving. Now, what does that look like? What does your technology grant look like? I'll give you some examples. There isn't really a form to fill out. There are examples that you have access to. But you're writing this almost like you're writing a paper, convincing me to sign off on X number of dollars for a blank device. One of my buddies, very, very close friend of mine, he works for the state of Michigan, and his job is this right here. The TST grant, the Targeted Site Transformation Grant, where last fall he had over 200 different school districts. There are only 500 in the state of Michigan. It's like 560 something. Out of those, he had 200 individual districts apply for a Targeted Site Transformation Grant, where they come in and they give you a blank check. What are you going to do with it? You're going to update your Wi-Fi with your switches. You're going to make sure that your technology infrastructure can handle a Wi-Fi network as big as it is, where every student going one-to-one. What are you going to do with that money? So this is just a blank overview of something that he used. Oops. Give you an overview of what the idea is, the proposal that you've got to fill out. How are you going to connect it to the National Education Technology Standards, the NETs, as opposed to the ISTEs? There's a rubric for it. REMC, you'll notice that that's an actual link, meaning this is a real thing. In the state of Michigan, schools can apply for blank checks. McCall, the Michigan Association of Computer Users for Learning, every year after their March conference, gives out $1,500 grants. You got to apply for them. But if you go into a school year one knowing how to apply for grants for money, man, that's really enticing. Some of the things that you've got to be, and then here's an example of a grant, TechSmith. We are very fortunate in the state of Michigan that we have one of the best screen capture programs in the world housed right in Michigan, in Okemos. An example of some of the things that you're going to have to be able to do. This is his website, not his website, but it's the TST application site. You'll notice that there's an application that school districts have to fill out. That application looks something like this. We're not going to go through all of it because some of it is very tedious and technology based. Tell us about your network switches. That's not a question for a teacher. That's a question for your IT guy for your school. But classroom technology, this is a question for you. What is your current situation with classroom technology? Describe the number of classrooms, the make, model, age of projectors, make, model, age of teacher computers, etc. What mobile devices you have, what mobile device management you're currently using, any additional technology information, the readiness side. Do you currently have a one-to-one implementation in your school or district? How will a one-to-one initiative positively impact student learning? You've got to be able to explain that. You have a blank check for any technology that you want to integrate. What are you going to choose? We're going to have subscriptions for, I don't know, PBS. Student subscriptions. Every student gets a free student subscription. How will that impact student learning? How will each student use that and improve in their learning? What is your vision of 21st century learning? Doesn't that kind of sound like our philosophy of education? How does technology improve the critical thinking and problem solving for students? Identify 3 major outcomes you want to achieve by implementing one-to-one. What are 3 things that are going to happen with your technology grant? If you want to convince me to give you X number of dollars for 120 iPads, give me 3 major outcomes that I can measure. And then I can come in after a year and say, nope, you didn't meet them. Give me my iPads back. How is technology currently being integrated in the classroom? What's currently happening on us, and this is the tough part, not on a